with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It's Wednesday, April 10th, 2019. My name is Michael Brooks, and on Michael Wednesday, this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, the crew discusses the news while Sam gears up for his Vegas conference. I'm sure you'll hear all about it tomorrow.
It's lit,
Hello.
Sam.
Hello.
Hashtag me too.
I'll definitely do that bit soon, the Sam in Vegas bit. On today's program, Bibi Netanyahu retains power in Israel, and it's time that we get serious about how politics actually works there. Trump's obsession with framing Iran as a terrorist threat and the Shia-Sunni split. We'll get to that, how that actually looks in reality. The Trump administration continuing to strongly suggest they're going to return family separations as a matter of policy. Theresa May is speaking with EU officials today in a request for a Brexit extension to June 30th. As that process grinds on, Macron appears to be softening a little bit. YouTube had to take down its live stream of the congressional hearings on white supremacy and hate speech on Facebook because there were too many anti-Semitic and racist comments on the stream.
Well, I mean, to be fair, there's too many on a lot of videos. That one was just exceptionally visible.
Right. True that. Texas bill would make it possible to put women to death for having an abortion as the extreme continues to migrate to the center in the Republican Party. Virginia drug company is charged with a $1 billion opioid marketing scheme targeted at addicts. Amazon is not going to hit its sustainability goals. There's something shocking. And former CBS News reporter Laura Logan is joining Sinclair in another incredibly unsurprising headline. And instability wears on in Guyana. Potential sort of oil-related political change in the works there. What happened to the Venezuela coup? Maybe there wasn't any organic support for Guaido. That's interesting. And Charlie Kirk and his fellow band of idiots have a very interesting concept of what the Kurdish rebels, the Kurdish YPG rebels, are. And we might need to dispel it a little bit. All that plus RAP to the free exchange of ideas and a lot more on today's Majority Report. Oh, and of course I should mention socialist surge in the city of Chicago. The four of us are here. Tomorrow, what are we saying? In no time, you'll be hearing Sam say, like, so I woke up. He gets in his, like, he gets this kind of, like, drinking voice going on. Because his, like, Rat Pack intonation.
He's
sort
in
of like,
tort mode right now.
He's just like, I was at the craps tables, and it was a friend of mine who was actually friends with Benjamin and I. We wrote a pitch together for ABC, but the pitch was a joke. We didn't actually want to sell the script. But so we met writing that. And he recognized me because he saw me on Hayes. And anyway, so I'm up 15. And joining me now is a guy from a John Grisham book.
Sam's trips to Vegas are like his solstices.
Totally. They're definitely like his yes. It's a very important time for transition, reinvention, rebirth.
Yep. I go to the 24-hour drone festival, and Sam goes to Vegas to talk about torts. We all need to restore ourselves in our own way.
No, it's beautiful. Turns out that the baby formula company decided that it was
It's just cheaper to kill people, so let's just kill them.
It's cheaper to kill the babies.
Wow.
It was just, wow, so you have this in documents? Yep, the document right here from May 5th
Right there,
actually says it'll be cheaper to just kill these kids with bad formula sourced from China than give them formula.
That really is just stunning.
In Discovery, we found a document that said, on the one hand, we can make our products safer for people. On the other hand, we can make lots of money and kill people. We decided to do the latter.
We decided to do the latter. And that is true. They actually
Wow.
really do find stuff like that in Discovery from these companies. I guess I feel like if you have any understanding of how American business works, this should never actually be shocking. But it is just on the pure, like, it's like we were joking about Rod Blagojevich last night, how like Rod Blagojevich is in jail for doing what basically every single politician does, except he like insisted on spelling out the last part of it and like officially making it illegal on a wiretap. So these companies companies all the time calculate that they will put their margin over safety. That of course, but what is different is when you literally have it in writing. Like, hey, does this machine gun work? Nah.
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. But I mean, obviously, it would be a super pain to fix it. All right, let's put that in writing.
You're getting everyone so horny for torts.
That really is just stunning.
And then that's. Yep, and you can find that all there at deadbabyformula.com, and you can track her case over there at the.
That incredible. It really is just stunning. How's my sound?
Anyway, my next guest is right here already, so you got to get out of the seat.
Jake's here. Hi, Jake.
I still wear
Hey,
this
it's
shirt.
awesome. It's so, yeah, people need to be progressive.
We all got Sue the Collector t-shirts.
SueTheCollector.com. No one will
That
ever
guy-
be as good as that guy.
No, that guy's
he
a
was
hero.
extremely on his shit, and
guy was
I wear the
amazing.
shirt in his honor every night.
Did you know that you need, if in order to call you past 2 p.m., you need a Queen's Mark? Because U.S. Debt collectors are actually subject to Commonwealth law. I had no
Did you
idea.
know if a
Turns out I'm suing them now.
If a debt collector calls you after 5 p.m., they basically owe you $1 million. No, that was all good info.
No, that guy was amazing.
Yeah.
Please listen to that interview. That will make like everybody's life better. That
Yep.
was awesome.
Time to get a credit card and put some things on it,
Yeah, time to go enjoy yourself.
because apparently it doesn't matter.
Basically, Sam could just take tomorrow off too. I think we've got torts coverage covered.
That's what we should do for the next April Fool's show. We do the Torts
just do
conference. We're all in Vegas and Sam's in Brooklyn.
And then we go like
Sam, can you hear me?
he's all like, yeah, next we have Rod Covington from Covington, Berlin & Co. It's a Tallahassee-based firm suing diaper makers.
Guys.
When we're not responsive in the studio, I think Sam feels like an astronaut, like outside of the space capsule a little bit.
And to be fair, you know, he's discovering like the greatest corporate malfeasance in the world. And we're like back in the studio being like, is Bumble's more popular now?
Hey, Brendan, who's winning the Mets game?
Oh, torts.
That's pretty great.
It really is just stunning.
So more on that
dude,
tomorrow.
I want to, you know what? That is such an awesome idea that I really want us to do. I want to be Sam hosting the Tort show.
I'll be the lawyer.
Yeah. Just
So Bob McLaughlin, and when did you first get an intimation that the baby formula was not what it was said to be? It didn't have extra vitamin B. It had lead.
Well, I was hearing from a local doctor that like 7 straight babies had died, and I began to draw a parallel between this baby formula they'd been given out, and I called the company, and they acted very suspicious. They hung up on me immediately, and all of a sudden I saw private detectives outside of my house, so I thought maybe I'm onto something.
So 7 babies. That really is just stunning.
okay.
Well,
This will be the remainder of the show.
Good part of it. That's actually pretty gold. But so is this. Ilhan Omar continues to hopefully, I mean, the best case scenario with what she does to all of these ghouls and goblins of the right wing is just shoot a bunch of cortisol in their bodies. They continue to freak out about her. This is in a segment, and we'll get to the Netanyahu reelect shortly. But you just had a prime minister who is ran a campaign on formalizing an apartheid state in contradiction of any type of law, if you take that seriously, any type of sort of basic human progress that we theoretically supposed to have sort of achieved. And this segment turns into a meltdown about Ilhan Omar talking about the atmosphere in this country targeting Muslims after the terrorist attacks of 9/11. And Brian Kilmeade he's worked up.
All right. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She was last month at an event supporting CARE, which is the Council on American-Islamic Relations. And there's a soundbite we're about to play for you that has got some people upset because of how it trivializes September the 11th, the greatest terror attack in our nation's history, which was conducted by terrorists. And here she is talking about how Muslims in this country are scrutinized these days. And then listen to how she describes September the 11th.
Far too long, we have lived with the discomfort of being a second-class citizen. And frankly, I'm tired of it. And every single Muslim in this country should be tired of it. CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties.
Yeah, some people did something, like an unprovoked attack, killing people in the Pentagon, thousands in the Pentagon, and the Flight 93, as well as in the World Trade Center. Really? There's so few people did something? You have to wonder if she's an American first. Dan Crenshaw tweeted this out. First member of Congress to ever describe terrorists who killed thousands of Americans on 9/11 as some people who did something, unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And can you imagine if she was representing your community, and you were in her district, how embarrassed you must feel today?
Many people are upset because they just said she was flippant about it. Some people did something. It was an attack that changed our entire country. I read that someone tweeted this out. They said, some people did something, sounds like a bake sale, but it does not really sound like a terrorist attack that killed 3,000 people and altered the New York City skyline forever.
So as a Muslim American, you should be more outraged because they sullied your religion. In the name of religion, they kill Americans and still do it on a daily basis.
There's so much to pick apart here. And what I find ironic is part of to pick apart is, and I'm so burned out on all of these tone conversations, but these are the people that are all, oh my God, people on the left, they're too uptight. They need to take a joke. By the way, sometimes that's true. And sometimes people are reaching for straws and trying to, I get when we get clips like that of right-wing figures saying something that's like, okay, that's slightly inelegantly put, but we can do better than that. They built a whole segment on a primary point, which is objectively true, which is that Muslims were both targeted and focused on by state agencies through policies like the Patriot Act, as well as through vigilante violence after 9/11. So groups needed to form to protect a persecuted category of people that had nothing to do with the September 11th attacks. That's what she's talking about. This is also on the heels, the third thing, of a couple of days ago, a guy being arrested with plans to assassinate her, as they continue to try to amplify the conspiracies and nonsense about her. And then that brings us to Dan Crenshaw. I will never forget. Here's a good example of an un-PC thing I can live with. I don't care that some guy on Saturday Night Live made a joke about his eye patch. I do not. And if you do care, and if it was offensive, here's what you do. On the next Weekend Update, you say, hey, maybe that joke was in poor taste. I'm sorry. Although, by the way, check out our back catalog of every single joke we did about David Patterson, the entire premise of which is he's blind. Okay, that joke went on for years. I apologize. Not, let's give a national program platform to a fascist member of Congress. And here, Matt, what do we have up on screen here?
Dan Crenshaw, alongside a few other Tea Party people, I can't remember any of the names off the top of my head, but some not great people, was a member of, as Mike Michaels says, the oldest and largest Tea Party group. I'm just going to read from Mike Michaels. The oldest and largest Tea Party group on Facebook would like to congratulate Daniel Crenshaw, one of our Tea Party group admins, for his impressive win in yesterday's Texas District 2 runoff. Dan will easily win in November and is going to make a superb congressman. Now, another
Hashtag MAGA.
Another post you might like to see from Mike Michaels here, just to get an idea of what this, what the moderators,
I would like to get an idea of what kind of ideas were being exchanged.
How well was this administrated? Oh, here's Mike Michaels. At least the KKK was white supremacy run by whites. Now, on the other hand, the BLM vermin is nothing but black supremacy with white masters. So that's just the type of people that Dan Crenshaw likes to hang out with.
There we go. And so he gets to be and this is but again, this is a perfect example. If you want to take the angle of Dan Crenshaw, Dan Crenshaw is a far-right extremist who was part of this group, who ran on the wall, who ran on a pure MAGA platform. I don't even remember who was it. Was it Pete Davidson? Yeah. Made some eye patch joke about him. Honestly,
he
I'm
looked like
sorry.
a porn star.
Okay,
it didn't even really make sense.
Who cares? Be an adult. Who cares? But because of a certain set of sensitivities, this guy, and again, it isn't like, hey, I'll issue an apology. Sorry about that one specific joke. Or I'll do you another one. Okay, Dan Crenshaw can come to studio. I'll apologize to him. And then I'll say, hey, my bad. Sorry to mock your eye patch. Incidentally, why are you running on white supremacy? Maybe you'd like to answer that on Weekend Update instead of like, oh, they were buddies. This is a micro version of the Samantha Bee Glenn Beck thing. It's like this incredible weird contradiction inside certain types of liberal and centrist types, where there's this extraordinary uptightness and oversensitivity, but then at the same time, a total inability to see what certain people are for who they are. And this guy is someone who is out trying to exploit and demonize Ilhan Omar when someone was just arrested for trying to assassinate her, and you're clutching at and you're reaching for straws for an inelegant phrase in a speech on an important issue which you're on the wrong side of.
Yeah. The speed with which they pivoted from the topic at hand, which is Islamophobia and Muslims being unfairly targeted, to 9/11 was really, really bad and it was done by Muslim terrorists, kind of implies that the Muslims in this country deserved what happened to them after 9/11.
I don't think it kind of does. It also directly does.
Yeah. It also shows like how everything these people say is 100% projection, right? Because Ilhan Omar never even said the dual loyalty thing.
Never.
They only said that she said it. And that's because they were thinking of saying it about her.
Virginia's Corey Stewart,
do we have this up on screen?
Here, was another one of those admins of that Facebook page. Dan Crenshaw, when asked about this, was like, I barely even knew I was a member of that. How is this news? So he doesn't think he should ever...
I have an actual legitimate question here, because I don't do this dual loyalty stuff for anybody, because it's mostly just nonsense. In general, even when marshaled against because it's just the wrong way of framing the issue. Like, you could say, hey, are you lobbying for the Emirates? That's an actual question. But Dan Crenshaw, do you have dual loyalty to the Confederacy and the modern United States? And that is like my legitimate question to most frontline Republican leaders.
It's a fair question.
Also, the mention of CARE, and people call that a terrorist organization, not according to the State Department. One that is associated to this, according to the State Department, is the one Seb Gorka's affiliated with. But Dan Crenshaw doesn't seem to be too worried about that one.
No, I don't see any. I don't see any tweets about that.
I wonder how Dan Crenshaw's making the selections of which alleged terrorist ties he's upset about.
I know, but by all means, establish an Instagram friendship with him, and definitely apologize if you've ever been rude to him on a comedy show. That's really crucial, really strategic. Honestly, look, let's go absurd for a second. The equivalent of this is I'm being absurd. I'm not drawing a direct parallel. Calm down. But, SNL of 1930s Germany. Oh, my God, Hitler's mustache is so disgusting. That really hurt my feelings, and I'm a veteran. Oh, okay, why don't you come on Weekend Update? We can become pals.
There were also eye patch Nazis, too.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. I mean, you got to ask yourself, are people being systematically discriminated against for having eye patches in this country? I think the answer is no.
Sure. And again, it's not even like, if you want to apologize, cool. That's not even like the point.
Well, it's
the
a
point
joke.
is first of all, it's a joke. And that in general, I'm sorry, calm down. But the other point is like the gulf in between a throwaway joke and we're going to go all the way to flying this guy into New York and making his most prominent outside of right-wing echo chamber media exposure is, oh, look at this nice veteran that's buddying with Pete Davidson after Pete Davidson made a joke about his eye patch.
Yeah, that's
what they did.
That's
I mean,
how
that
you
is quite
launder
literally
white supremacists into the mainstream.
That's it. And then all of a sudden that turned into a nothing story to a very real story.
Or sorry, I'll say white nationalist.
Oh,
just
yeah,
to-
no,
so
no,
Dan
yeah.
Crenshaw. So I don't have to invite Dan Crenshaw here to apologize to.
I'm just going to say nationalist, so we can really be in the clear.
I'm looking at Matt's computer screen right now. It's just a rogues gallery of Nazis with eye patches.
And I will. No, I'm not going to say that. Never mind.
We're sorry. The Majority Report is supported in part by Simple Habit. Simple Habit is a mobile app that provides a massive and diverse library of 5-minute guided meditations. And the Majority Report audience can try Simple Habit totally free for an entire week when you go to simplehabit.com/majority. There's a growing body of scientific evidence. I would primarily look at Richie Davidson's work at the University of Wisconsin. It goes back to Herbert Benson at Harvard. I think he started documenting this stuff in the 70s, at least the 80s. Stress, relaxation, focus, depression, anxiety. Meditation has a myriad of benefits. Simple Habit has over 2,000 guided meditations specifically designed for different parts of your day and just about anything you might be dealing with in life. They have guided meditations for mindfulness, meditations for anxiety, for depression, for when you're having trouble falling asleep, meditations for when you're wanting to overcome procrastination or for when something important is going on at work, and meditations designed for parents. They have meditations made specifically for when you're waking up or on your lunch break or when you've just gotten home from work or when you're going to bed. As I always say, the one that helps me go to sleep is the one that I have come to rely on. Incredibly helpful. And but I do love, I mean, I have a background. I've practiced different meditation techniques, primarily mindfulness, for a while, and I sort of love the menu. I love the different options. There really are a lot of different ways to meditate. Different people are trying to accomplish different things with meditation, and Simple Habit is able to cater to just about anyone, regardless of what your goals are with meditation or how much past experience they have with meditation. The variety of guided meditations in Simple Habit is part of what sets it apart. Simple Habit just won the 2008 Google Play Award for Wellbeing App. It's available on iOS, Android, and web browser. And the Majority Report audience can try it for free by going to simplehabit.com/majority. If you're watching on YouTube, we've put a link in the video description. So Benjamin Netanyahu has hung on to power in Israel. And this really shouldn't come as much of a surprise to anybody. It was a very tight election, and his primary, opponent in the election was not running with any kind of fundamental strategic alternative to Netanyahu's position. That's a really important thing to highlight here, because the stylistic concern that Netanyahu is totally alienated, as an example, like the center left, broadly speaking, or that Israel should sort of pretend to have a sort of more respectful relationship to the United States, no matter who's in power. That's the standard issue position of, as an example, even just like the security establishment in Israel. You're much more likely to hear a former Mossad leader or a defense official, even potentially more substantively acknowledge that, as an example, the Iran deal was working, that it was effective, even though they had problems with it and they shouldn't undermine it, or even make a sort of occasional tip of the hat to doing something about the Palestinians. This was not in the election. What was in the election was Netanyahu running clearly on essentially formalizing apartheid and also most likely exchanging a deal with prospective coalition partners to make himself immune from criminal prosecution because he's under indictment right now. Let's go to two different reactions to his win. We'll start with Trump, and then we'll go to the Palestinian analyst Diana Butto, and we'll come back and go from there.
Say it. So the fact that Bibi won, I think we'll see some pretty good action in terms of peace. Look, everyone said, and I never made it a promise, but everybody said you can't have peace in the Middle East with Israel and the Palestinians. I think we have a chance, and I think we have now a better chance with Bibi having won. Yes, please.
So there is a possibility that, as Professor Juan Cole talked about, that there is a new Saudi initiative that is very different from the one in 2003. The one in 2003 was a Saudi proposal that ended up going nowhere. Essentially, if the Israelis withdrew from the West Bank and Gaza, if they created a genuine two-state solution along 67 borders, then the Saudis would lead the rest of the Arab world in recognizing Israel. The dynamic we're in now is that Israel informally has very tight connections with Saudis, with the Emirates. Obviously, they already have diplomatic relations with Jordan and Egypt. And the preoccupation and overwhelming focus of both Israel and particularly the Saudis is Iran. And there's really no problem with selling out the Palestinians in the process. It's not like there's any sincere concern from any of these parties about, liberating the Palestinians from the Israelis. So so a peace deal could mean, some type of, I don't even know how they'll phrase it, but it will be no delivery for the Palestinians. It will just be a sort of formalization of subjugation, even if it's called a state, which I at this point even doubt. And then it will be, well, no, we delivered a region-wide peace deal. And that can, of course, be sold as something bigger and better and more bold and ambitious and so on. Now, it does remain to be seen, because I think a deal like that actually could set off another wave of political unrest across the region. This is Diana Butto on Democracy Now!
And we're also joined by Diana Butto, a Palestinian attorney, has been an advisor to President Mahmoud Abbas in negotiations with Israel. Your reaction to the elections, and also to what appears to be a historically low turnout by the Palestinian citizens of Israel, what the significance of that is?
But in terms of the reaction vis-a-vis the outcome that we've seen, this was, in effect, for Palestinians at least, this was an election in which you either choose Trump or you choose Trump. The positions that both Likud took and Benny Gantz took were virtually indistinguishable, particularly when it came to Palestinians. They bragged about how much they were going to beat up on Palestinians, and then took their voters as a result. So it's not at all surprising that we see this outcome, given that we really had two candidates that were quite mirroring one another when it came to this election. In terms of the voter turnout, there were a number of factors in terms of low Palestinian voter turnout. One was the fact that a number of people have ideologically chosen to boycott, and then others was because there was a level of voter intimidation and people also believing that their MKs, their members of Knesset, were unable to deliver. The big problem, however, is that we've seen a rise in fascism in Israel, and instead of people boycotting, we were hoping to see that people would have come out in greater numbers to try to at least push back against that tide. As it stands right now, although the ballots have not been completely counted, we really only have about 15 out of 120 members of Knesset who believe in equality and who believe in an end to the occupation. And that's a very sad indication of where Israel is.
Diana Butto, can you explain who can vote in the Israeli elections and who can't, and also respond to these 1,200 cameras being put in the election booths, the polling places in Arab neighborhoods?
Yes, definitely. In terms of who can vote, it's only citizens of Israel who are allowed to vote. And so of that citizenry, about 16% of the people who are eligible to vote are Palestinians who are citizens of Israel. But then you look at the vast remainder of people that Israel controls, whether it's people who live in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, or in Israeli-occupied East Jerusalem. You're looking at close to 6 million individuals who are ineligible to vote in Israeli elections and yet are being governed by Israel. In terms of the cameras, this is not only a violation of Israeli law, but it was something that the Israeli Prime Minister brazenly is supporting and had came out and said, yes, we shouldn't be worried about this. There should be cameras in all polling stations. The reason this, of course, is so alarming is the fact that this leads to voter intimidation. There are a number of Palestinians who are working either as teachers, as in other ministries, and who, seeing that there is a camera in place, feel rightfully so that their votes are being monitored, whether they show up to the polls or who it is that they're going to be voting for. And so this type of voter intimidation is the type of action that Netanyahu has done not only when it came to this election, but in previous elections where he tried to claim that Arabs were, quote, voting in droves. He's ideologically opposed to Palestinian freedom, ideologically opposed to Palestinians having equality, and will do anything that it takes to try to intimidate and to try to make sure that there is perpetual control over Palestinian lives.
That's absolutely true. That's an objective statement. And the parties that are rising in Israel, if anything, are even more extreme than Netanyahu and certainly synchronized with him. But I think it's really important, and I'll loop back to some of the results in a second, but this is not just Netanyahu. So it's encouraging that a Beto O'Rourke or a Pete Buttigieg have criticized him. Obviously, Sanders has led the way in this, but now there's, and again, several candidates didn't go to AIPAC. Sanders was the only one who specifically identified why he didn't go to AIPAC. So he still stands apart and is better than the other candidates on this vital issue. But if you frame it, and I mentioned this yesterday, Netanyahu, yes, is a monster. He's a leader in the authoritarian trend. He's an apartheidist. He's a bigot. He's a repugnant individual to anybody with human values. But unfortunately, he is in the center, clearly, of Israeli politics. He's going to surpass David Ben-Gurion in terms of length of leadership of this country. And I'm going to quote now from the New York Times, because this write-up is an accurate reflection of how a primarily very hard right, very unconcerned about these issues that we might be concerned about in terms of justice or equity, Israeli electorate is voting. And also the dire state of, and my unbelievable sympathies for, any part of the Israeli left, which, yes, the joint list still did manage to send some people in parliament. I'll get to that in a second. But quoting now from the New York Times, though in many ways they have, Benjamin Netanyahu's apparent re-election as Prime Minister of Israel attests to a starkly conservative vision of the Jewish state and about its people, where they are and where they are headed. They prize stability as well as military and economic security that Mr. Netanyahu has delivered. They are in many ways never been safer, though they remain afraid, especially of Iran and its influence over their neighbors, against which Mr. Netanyahu has relentlessly crusaded. They are persuaded by his portrayal of those who challenge him, whether Arab citizens or the left, as enemies of the state, and they take his resemblance to authoritarian leaders around the world as evidence that he was ahead of the curve. They credit Mr. Netanyahu, whose strategic vision values power and fortitude above all, with piloting Israel to unprecedented diplomatic heights, and they believe still more is possible, and they loathe to let anyone less experienced take controls. Let's be honest with ourselves, said Michael B. Orn, a former Israeli ambassador to Washington. Our economy is excellent. Our foreign relations have never been better. We're secure. We've got a guy in politics for 40 years. We know him. The world knows him. And even our enemies know him. So that is a really perfect reflection of again, still the majority of the Israeli electorate. This was a much tighter race. But as Diana Buto pointed out, Benny Gantz is a former military chief. He presided over the atrocities of Gaza of 2014. He bragged about his brutality against the Palestinians. There's no daylight here. There isn't even the old sort of two-state quasi-peace process versus full apartheid daylight. And even then that was always suspect because settlements had always expanded under labor governments. So the next step of how to actually talk about this and figure this out is going to mean that Netanyahu actually can't just be a stand-in for a fuller and honest actual accounting of what Israeli politics is. And there's a reason he keeps winning. There's a reason that the left is totally marginalized there, even the center left like Moretz, and that labor, is essentially irrelevant and offers critiques on the economy, which, by the way, I don't know how strong the Israeli economy is. It's built on a lot of the same fundamental inequalities and bubbles that the rest of the neoliberal world is. Israel tracks the whole Western order with that. And part of the reason, the last thing I'll leave you with, is that the broader critique of Israel is harder, not just because of all of the things that people talk about that are real. Of course, there's an Israel lobby, like there's a Saudi lobby and all sorts of other lobbies that influence power and exertion. And of course, there's people's absolutely rightful concern about the history of anti-Semitism and how we discuss and talk about Israel. But there's also the reality that someone like Jeff Halper will put forward that Israel is a microcosm of how the Western world, for lack of a better term, is managing the fallout of today's global economy and power relations. So that if you start to look at the U.S. role in Afghanistan that continues to this day, if you look at Iraq, if you look at all sorts of insurgencies and counterinsurgencies and drone programs and the merging of military and policing at home and internationally, you can start to look at the savagery and management of Gaza as a microcosm and a showcase for how all of those relationships work. And it's very literal. I mean, Israel, there's a reason Israel is a prime security systems and weapons exporter in the world. That oppression, that dynamic is an advertisement for security policies, for weapons, for population control. There's a reason that Israeli companies are involved in things like detention centers. There's a reason that going back to the 1980s, some of the things that we talk about that Reagan supported in Central America, some of the death squads and mass killings in places like Guatemala and El Salvador also included flying in Israeli trainers. So Israel has also become a showcase for this broader barbarism of this relationship. And that critique is going to go far beyond Netanyahu, and it's going to implicate all of us. So that's the sort of big picture around that election. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that?
I think that was all pretty good. I would just reiterate that Israel, I feel like it's mask off time for Israel. Definitely. They can't keep playing this game about how, it's the only democracy in the Middle East and we have human rights and gay rights and stuff. No, I think more and more Americans are waking up to the fact that that's not true. It is it's complicated, definitely, but I feel like sometimes people use that as a cop-out to avoid taking a position on it. And some aspects of it are not that complicated. Like if you have a population of people that is subject to your domination who don't have citizenship rights and don't get to vote, it's not a democracy.
Period. And nothing complicated. Don't let people use the complicated evasion with you on this. It's not. I mean, how you actually solve a problem like this and the logistics of it and the culture of it and the politics and the economics, yes, that's complicated. But the basic analysis of this situation, anybody says that it's complicated, they're either totally ignorant or they're trying to hustle you. It's nonsense. The actualities of the reality are quite clear. And again, I mean, look, if you put the shoe, if you flip the situation, and there was a group of Jewish people that lived in two disparate pieces of land, they were kicked off, hundreds of thousands of people were kicked off of their homes to begin with. They're in these small slots controlled by another state and regularly killed and have second-class citizenship. We would be rightfully appalled at the greatest currently existing act of anti-Jewish violence and oppression on the planet. I mean, there's nothing complicated about that basic analysis. Nothing. And it makes, I know that obviously the Democratic Party and Democratic candidates, even the best ones, are not going to be where I am on this issue yet. Of course not. But I got to tell you, like, I mean, look, in some ways, Bill de Blasio is just such a delusional buffoon. I don't even know what to say. But he's the one who's trying to make himself a thing in 2020. And obviously, he'll never be. But the notion that he still is the mayor of New York City, that's an important position, goes to AIPAC and attacks BDS while at the same time, discoursing that he's like the real social democrat candidate. Whoa.
Yeah. And for people to rail against Trump's racism while totally ignoring the racism of Netanyahu and the Israeli state is ridiculous. Like, people could say, oh, it's not about race, it's about, the Jewish people. But, like, how do they treat Jews who are not white in Israel?
Absolutely. Of course. We'll get to actually more of this stuff in the fun half. Some of it won't be so fun because we'll talk a little bit about Iran.
We have some fun stuff about Trump's trip to Mount Vernon, though.
Okay, but I want to actually, I love that. All right, I want to actually end in a slightly proper time here, the first half of the show. Get to the fun half. Become a member of the Majority Report today. Majority.fm/become a member. It's how this show happens. It's how we have an independent voice for conversations, for debates, for differing perspectives inside the left.
Ideas
and exchanges of ideas. And some of us are actually committed to those things.
We got to source our ideas, folks. We are idea suppliers.
Yeah. Ideas don't come ideas, do they come from here? I don't know. I think I'm on to something here. Where do ideas come from? So become a member, majority.fm/become a member. Less than a cup of coffee a day. JustCoffee.coop. Fair trade tea, coffee, or chocolate. Get the Majority Report blend. It's a win for everyone. Last night on the Michael Brooks Show, Soumya Shankar broke down the Indian elections for us, why the left overperforms in the state of Kerala. And then Felix Biederman and I had a great time just actually dunking on Dave Rubin. And in the postgame, we had a really great discussion of what the psychology of Democratic and Republican fundraising emails reveal about the different parties. So why is it that all the Republican emails are just like, hey there, Michael, they tried to end the white race. Well, I'm proud to tell you, we didn't let them. But can you believe that Rosie O'Donnell's still coming for us? And then, like, all of the Democratic emails are like, dear Michael, this is Barack Obama, and I'm freaking out.
Here's
oh yeah, we use this
apparently from Nancy Pelosi. Kiss all hope goodbye. If Boehner has his way, we might as well blah blah blah.
Yeah, Paul Begala, I'm bleeding. So some of the problems with loser and winner attitudes.
Update at dccc.org. Crushing blow.
Jesus
Calm down,
Christ.
D-Trip. You're like a bad ex.
I know, it's not good. Tough stuff. So that was very fun. Patreon.com/TMBS. We're doing a Sunday show because the last week of the month we're in LA and we're off. So we want to make sure everybody gets their full shows this month. Dom Ketchiachu is joining us to talk about the end of empire and the creation of the third world, and then a bunch of other stuff. As always, Michael Brooks Show on YouTube. Patreon.com/TMBS. Get your tickets. The surge is happening. I saw it today in the numbers, so now we're actually have very few left. Get your tickets to the Bootleg Theatre, April 20th, Michael Brooks live show with Ana Kasparian, Big Woz, Nando, Vila, and the whole crew. Jamie, what's going on?
So this week on the Antifada, we have an episode that is out now that is free for everyone. We had on Brett and Brian from Street Fight Radio.
Nice.
For a very cool, very fun, exciting show. They're
very cool, very fun.
Very legal, very cool. We definitely did not say anything treasonous. It was all satire. They're just like chill anarchist dads from Ohio who do a wonderful show out there. One day a week, they just listen to people talk and complain about their jobs. And I think it's a really good way to build solidarity and class consciousness. And sometimes they hook people up with like organizers and stuff, which is very cool. So we talked with them about drugs and parenting and politics and all that good stuff. And then out on Friday, we have a bonus with Leslie Lee III from Struggle Session, where we all talk about the movie Us, which is very good if you haven't seen it yet.
I like Leslie III, and I'm bad at promoting other shows I've been on, but I will say I was on Struggle Session to talk about Scarface recently, and that was actually a great conversation. And that's a really fun show. I know you were on there recently, too.
Yeah. We talked about Interview with a Vampire.
Matt, what's up?
The new literary hangover episode, The Soul of Man Under Socialism by Oscar Wilde, is available online now. This is the, if you have the YouTube up, Jamie, it's got, you can see the sort of design on the cover. There's two things you can notice. One is that under socialism was omitted, even in Oscar Wilde's lifetime. Didn't want to have that part on. Let's just call it The Soul of Man. It'd be simpler to sell. That sort of pattern with the leaf, but it's sort of geometric, that comes from a guy named William Morris, who was like a sort of early sort of libertarian socialist. He was like a printmaker. He made wallpaper, famous for making wallpaper, and also was like, we need to go back to sort of feudal ways of having meaning in work, sort of early mercantilist sort of nostalgia type of thing that was very influential to Oscar Wilde. Check that episode out, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't.
That's awesome. What I told you that there was a guy at an event who came up to me and he was like, I'm legit, like, I'm a fan of all the shows. You guys are like the Wu-Tang of left-wing podcasts. And that's actually not a bad analogy. I kind of buy it. All right, guys, we'll see you in the fun half. Calling into the system. Welcome to the fun half, everybody. Calling into the system now. So there was some pretty disturbing, super disturbing news that came out yesterday. And, I make no secret of the fact, I think everybody in this office is a Sanders supporter, correct? I think so. And so I think we're all, transparent about who we support for president. I think there's, probably maybe different degrees of Sanders support, but I think all of us are basically on the same page. And the only reason I'm doing this preamble is because I think I'm 100%, I'm a Bernie lad. And I support the guy 100%. But
you're a Bernard brother.
I'm a Bernard brother. So when you hear something that is just so disturbing about your candidate, I think I have to be intellectually honest enough to acknowledge that to the audience. And in some ways I was not thrilled that I was in the chair today because I didn't want to confront this, but here I am. We have to confront it. Bernie Sanders, and I hate to do this, but I will put on Berkeley music. Bernie Sanders wrote a book. It sold well, and he made money off of it. There's other pieces of news that go along with this. Apparently, Bernie has winter coats, as an example. He's been known to buy groceries and live in a home. And obviously, for those of us whose understanding of socialism is not delivering single-payer health care or free college or federal jobs guarantee or aggressively confronting the climate crisis or even restarting the nuclear deal with Iran or dealing with gentrification or not interfering in Latin America or any of the other things that Sanders has been campaigning on. For those of us whose idea of socialism is some type of knockoff Twitter-mediated version of Attenborough's Gandhi movie, this is profoundly upsetting and disturbing. And a lot of people on Twitter have been making a big point of oh my God, because of course, all politics is simply lifestyle politics. So of course, somebody who has a congressional salary and then in 2016 became one of the most important, arguably the most important politician in the country and whose books sold well, clearly his making money from it. I mean, look, it's frankly as ridiculous as those of us who promote higher taxes on wealthy people not personally writing checks to the Treasury, obviously. That's literally as ridiculous as being concerned about Bernie's book sales. But we do make you sign a vow of poverty when you join the DSA. So we're going to have to take a hard look at our endorsement of him. Right. I mean, the concerns about Bernie with DSA were obviously nothing on a policy level. It was obviously I heard that Bernie owns a home. So we might really need to look into that. A lot of spirited back and forth about his home ownership. And I'm assuming also the fact that he's an old man and he has a winter coat. Mm-hmm. That would also be pretty controversial,
also,
right?
I hear he has a cell phone.
Whoa. I mean, Jesus, I'm very much a pragmatist, but if you're telling me the guy has a cell phone, I don't know if I might need to vote for Jill Stein. But unfortunately, this is actually really disturbing because this makes me think of Bernie's whole history in a completely different manner. And we have the music and I guess some found audio explaining how we got to this. Bernie's, what is he, 77 years old? Yeah. All right.
Welcome to How to Build Generational Wealth with Bernie Sanders. While the rest of the young go-getters were coming out and going into Wall Street where they could work for the bankers and the millionaires and billionaires, I had a different, more long-term plan. I moved to rural Vermont and bummed around until I was in my 30s and ran third-party candidacies on issues. This is the first step in my patented system of guaranteed intergenerational wealth. The next step, become the mayor of a small New England city where you promote public parks and meet with the Sandinistas. This will be the next step in your plan. You're still making probably about $50,000 a year and you're almost 40 years old, but you just wait because the bucks are coming. Then you run an improbable third-party campaign for Congress. Now you might be thinking to yourself, this isn't so bad. I make over $100,000 a year. I'm solidly in the middle class. But I know that you didn't move to Vermont and become a socialist to make chump bullshit change like 150 grand a year working for Congress. No, you want millions, my friend, and so did I. Which takes us to our next step. Declare your candidacy for president in 2016 to little or no fanfare. Have a hunched-over posture, rant about single-payer and against Hillary Clinton, piss absolutely everybody off, then write a best-selling book. Boom, you're a millionaire. And that is my patented system for intergenerational wealth so that you, too, will become, at the very least, a millionaire. You might not have to wait until you're in your 70s, but that might just be the way it shakes out. And that was the purpose of my entire political career, planned down to the date of when I would run for president. Thank you.
So basically, if you're planning on calling and asking about this, I think I've already preemptively called you an idiot. And I mean, this is one of those things that is just self-canceling. Like, if you are making this as like a serious and anything other than an ironic point, you're dumb.
You're showing your ass on this one, folks.
I mean, you're showing like the void where your ass should be. Like, it's just embarrassing.
That's dark.
Well, it's a good bit for him to act like he is a rags to riches sort of like Horatio Alger. Was that the guy?
Yes.
Like, work as hard as and you can just make money. This is, I guess, the meritocracy works.
The meritocracy work started from the bottom. Now we here.
And he did
Was
it.
in the basement in Putney doing a teaching. Now we here.
He did it without exploiting anyone else's labor, even.
Oh, well, you know what I've
like
seen?
if Bernie were a boss
there's
of a
people who are
company,
bookbinders.
they might have a leg to stand on. But no, he did this with his own labor only.
Well, no, that's technically not true, right? Because he's publishing a book, and there's exploitation in the publishing.
Sure.
Yeah.
But he's not like the CEO of a company or anything.
Right.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, this is actually where, and I don't have a problem necessarily with ethical consumption. Like, I think if you can make a relative choice that you can have a sense of a supply chain being better than another supply chain, obviously, like, the extreme example is it's absolutely better to buy just coffee than Starbucks coffee, right? Like, that is objectively a better use of money, and one should use money that way. But, like, this is where the notion that you can consume your way out of the predicament of our system actually really starts to show up in these lifestyle damaging, destructive, profoundly stupid ways, because people really, I mean, again, anybody who's making this point is an idiot, but they think they have something here. Like, they are reducing a venerable political tradition, which is about delivering universal benefits to all people and democratizing the economy, to, I mean, literally, like some version of like an 80s movie about Gandhi. Like that is literally what they're doing, and it's embarrassing, and they don't even know it's embarrassing.
I think it was Matt Bors on Twitter said, like, oh, we can't have healthcare now because Bernie Sanders made $1 million.
Sorry.
I guess Ben Shapiro logicked us out of healthcare.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro just, Well, the problem, it isn't even Ben Shapiro. I mean, there's plenty of, Hillary den-enders that are trying to logic us out.
We do not even need to go to him.
James Surowiecki of The New Yorker said, Bernie's "it's totally fine that I'm a millionaire" underscores the problem with the whole "it's wrong for billionaires to exist" position. First of all, there's a big difference between a millionaire and a billionaire. Not that millionaires necessarily need to exist either, but there's a huge difference.
About 100 times, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, there's
1,000 times. Yeah.
1,000 times.
Yeah, that's why I paused.
You can quantify the difference. And also, no, look, frankly, before we can get into like bigger scenarios about how we engineer the economy, but in today's world, absolutely, if you can't understand the difference between somebody pulling in like $1.5 million a year and having $1 billion, then you don't have the cognitive capacity to write for the esteemed New Yorker. Like, one definitionally, one is, here is a group of people that should be taxed more. And Bernie would be the first person to say, he's running on taxing himself.
There better be exemptions for publishing books.
Yeah, there should be an exemption for publishing books. Maybe he should be the only presidential candidate that gets endless props. I mean, he's basically running like, Howard Schultz is a billionaire who's running to give himself money and self-aggrandize. And Bernie's a self-made millionaire who's running on taxing his profits away. So maybe that's another way of framing it. But if you can't understand the difference between like people who are doing well who need to be taxed more versus people whose just basic reality of their wealth is a structural threat to democracy, then you don't know how to think.
Also, like, I don't know that there would be ever a viable candidate for president who doesn't have $1 million. So what they're saying when they say that is basically you don't get a social democrat ever.
Well, they're saying, 2016.
And James Surowiecki also said that Bernie could have published his book under a Creative Commons license. And it's just like, how can supposedly intelligent people not understand the difference between doing this through policy and doing this through like selfless personal initiative?
Because they're either disingenuous or stupid, and our politics has been so stripped of analytic capacity, it's turned into a gross, pathetic little moralism game, which is absolutely not even a Trojan horse, because there's nothing that stealth about it. The upshot of all of these dumb, embarrassingly dumb points about the book is, yeah, well, too bad. I guess we're going to gentrify your neighborhood. I guess your kid's not going to get health care. I guess you're not going to get health care. I guess we're not going to do anything about the climate crisis because Bernie sold a book. I mean, honestly, like I almost wish somebody would call in. Because do you hear, I really, actually I don't, and it won't end well for you. But like, James Surowiecki is supposed to write, like he's supposed to write for the fucking New Yorker.
Yeah, well.
Like this is embarrassing on its face.
One of the things I've noticed since I got super political is that there are people that I respect and have respected as writers and as thinkers who are still really dumb about politics.
Did you know that? I mean, this is Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson had this a couple weeks ago. If Bernie wants to do something about climate change, why doesn't he walk from Burlington? And I'm sure a bunch of liberal idiots that are trotting this out a couple weeks ago, that was ridiculous. Right. It's ridiculous. Exactly. You fucking morons. I mean, Jesus Christ.
These are the same people who think he should like walk from appearance to appearance.
That's what I'm
instead of
saying.
Taking
That's
a
exactly what
flight
I'm saying. That's what
train.
Tucker Carlson said, and all of these same people were, I'm sure there is a grid between people that are trying to make hay of this book who are laughing at Tucker Carlson. I mean, I mean, I don't even. It's like we just shouldn't do anything because there has been an act of hypocrisy in everything.
Bernie should just lie about his wealth and say, I'm actually more wealthy than Howard Schultz, and just wink at the camera.
Yeah, that's going to be funny. And this is funny because, like, I've never thought, and again, we'll wait till they're released. That's, good best practices. But, like, I'd never thought, like, there's no terrible secret in the guy's tax returns. It probably is he probably is actually somewhat personally embarrassed about this, which I don't think he should be, frankly. I think it's totally besides the point. But they knew that a bunch of fucking morons, and I bet some MSNBC segments will be just built around, like, he says he doesn't want anybody to live in extreme poverty, but he wrote a bestseller.
On the bright side, didn't hurt Trump.
Right. Well, but Trump didn't also have, like, that type of, like, you don't have those types of weenies on Republican Twitter. Sort of like, yeah, he's a million. So what if he engaged in crimes? That means he's smart.
He's built his entire brand on
yeah, right.
Speaking ill about millionaires and billionaires, and yet he is one.
Well, okay. As I know you guys aren't going to like this, but as just like a devil's advocate, okay, it does show some of the failures of left populism when he constantly blames the millionaires and the billionaires instead of, the bosses and the landlords and the exploiters.
I don't think we're at the point yet where we're going to use that language in popular
It's just like the
campaign discourse.
It's the dialectic from
He's running
Occupy
for president.
Also, like we're very much a post-Occupy presidency, and that's like, I mean, technically I agree. Just in terms of if you're writing messaging for DSA, you want to focus on like relationships to means of production. I get that, but I mean, I think millionaires and billionaires that's
rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, it's simple. Just
it's a much wider net too.
Simple.
No bumps in the road.
It's simple.
Well, you're not putting up any obstacles. Like people don't need to have any sort of ideological priming to get on board against
exactly,
millionaires
because you
and
know why
billionaires.
when you say landlord, like I know what you mean and I agree with you, but then it's like, oh well, I don't know, like I own like a modest duplex and rent out part of it. I guess I'm a landlord. What does that mean? I own a little pizza parlor. Everybody gets millionaire, billionaire. Simple, no bullshit. Keep to it. And frankly, all of these idiots trying to make hay of it. If anything, like keep doing it because their bizarre weirdo fixation. And I'm not talking about like, look, I've been super transparent. I think if you're on the left, you're going to have to work really hard to convince me why you wouldn't support Bernie Sanders. I just don't buy any arguments I've heard. But again, if you have, I disagree with him on this or that. I don't like the way he frames this, whatever. That's all fine. That's great. Beautiful. But the types of people that are making hay of this have such a bizarre, I mean, they're actually starting to sound like how some people did sound about Hillary Clinton. Like there were some people who would have like, you know, Hillary said good morning at this event. I fucking hate her, right? And even people like us were like, Jesus Christ. Like, of course we don't like Hillary because she's done all sorts of horrible things policy-wise. And yeah, like nobody's going to pretend that she's like some great charismatic leader, but like calm the fuck down. Like, what do you, like, why are you obsessed with her? And these people are starting to demonstrate. And again, for literally a nice old Jewish man who wants you to have health care, they are running around with this bizarre, petty, weird, obsessive hatred with him. And I think that actually will help because it's just so fucking weird.
Yeah, the level of personal animosity I've seen towards Bernie on Twitter is like effing ridiculous. Like, oh, I'm going to savor it so much when that egomaniac loses. Like, they're way more obsessed with him than we are.
It's weird to call him an egomaniac, too. I just don't understand.
I mean, maybe, who knows? Like, he might kind of suck. I don't know. I don't love politicians in general.
No,
I have
Jamie,
like an affection for him.
But you do know. You do, on some level, you do know. I'm not talking like, do we know? Could he be like rude to people?
Well,
whatever.
like, we're not obsessed with him on a personal level.
No, but we also do know that if a guy was literally for his self-aggrandizement, he wouldn't have spent decades looking like a fucking rolled up used suit talking about the most unpopular political issues. I mean, when he was talking this stuff in the 90s, it was thought to be crackpot nonsense. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's both like to say that he's an egomaniac is both just okay. Who's running for president that doesn't have a healthy ego? That's a irrelevant point to make about any of these people on one level.
Well, yeah, my point is
and
it
then
doesn't
the second
matter.
point, and then the second, well, you know, in some level, I think it actually does matter because they're going after like the sort of core rationale in some parts of his candidacy, which is that there actually is a commitment there, which he's clearly demonstrated, and they're going after him in a way that is like, and again, just pure projection. Because the people that I see talking about his ego are like the most ego-identified politics as entertainment people on earth, who's, you know, they love Buttigieg because he tests well, right? Like,
well, that's true.
Or all of this other kind of silly stuff.
But like, my point is, you don't have to like Bernie on a personal level in order to support Bernie,
right?
Because that's not what politics is about, or that's not what it should be about. It should be about power and, you know, voting for our material benefit.
Absolutely, without a doubt. What was that you just put up, Brian? Just dumb.
Do we have that
shit.
story of Trump at Mount Vernon?
Okay,
it's pretty funny.
What is this story? Trump was at Mount Vernon. Matt.
Yeah,
happens?
so I mean, it's a kind of a short story here, but we can just look at it. President Trump reportedly wondered during a visit to Mount Vernon last year why George Washington did not have his historic compound, or did not name his historic compound after himself. If he was smart, he would have put his name on it, Trump said during a tour of Mount Vernon last April that he shared with French President Emmanuel Macron. 3 people briefed in exchange.
I'm sure if anybody could agree with that sentiment, it's Emmanuel Macron.
Yeah.
You've got to put...
If he was smart, he would have named it after himself.
You've got to put your name on stuff or no one remembers you. Yeah, like nobody remembers George Washington.
Yeah. By the way, Matt, you're the historian. Who's George Washington?
I'll get to that in a second.
Okay, please.
We'll circle back.
Yeah.
I didn't know this was a history episode.
Illicit history.
Yeah, illicit history.
Who was George Washington?
A key American politician you've never heard of because he didn't name stuff after himself.
Yeah, more and more people are recognizing him.
According to sources, Trump was disinterested in the first president during That's uninterested. I don't think he was disinterested. I think he was just uninterested.
uninterested.
But that's splitting hairs. In the first present during the tour, and said Macron and his wife had far more knowledge about the history of the compound. Bradburn later described the 45-minute tour with Trump as truly bizarre. Bradburn, quote, was desperately trying to get Trump interested in the first president's house, one source said. Trump also asked whether the first president was, quote, really rich. Another person familiar with the tour told Politico. That is what Trump was really the most excited about, the source added.
That's so awesome.
Oh, and he looked at the bedpost as like, that's a good bed to die in, Trump said, according to Politico.
Well, at least he's thinking about that.
Yeah, and I actually had...
That appeals to my Gothic sensibilities.
He's got some existential
I've probably
weight
thought
on
that
his head.
before.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to look for this quickly because somebody had a good tweet, which is basically like, Trump, if he actually did understand the history... Oh, so yeah, Patrick Blanchfield on Twitter said, it's worth noting here that most of Washington's real estate wealth came from land schemes that flagrantly violated British colonial law against acquiring native land west of the Alleghenies, and he concealed them from scrutiny using various tax tricks and shell companies.
Wow. Maybe he was a smart guy. That was not so nuts. Not so dumb after all. You're calling from a 917 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, good afternoon. This is Waterboat from Kashmir, but I'm actually living in Queens, New York.
How are you? Waterboat from Kashmir, currently stationed in Queens, New York. What's on your mind?
First of all, a big fan of your show, both of your shows, MR and TMBS. I haven't heard the other ones yet, but just wanted to call and say hi. And I saw your, the interview with Soumya Shankar last night. It was wonderful.
Excellent.
And I think it covered at least the Indian election really well. I do hope that next time when you have her on, you can perhaps ask a little bit about the elections in Kashmir.
Okay.
Because it is a little bit more complicated. Because the local assembly was dissolved last year. So right now they have basically governor rule, which Modi himself appoints. So there's like no local authority that's elected in. And in the upcoming election, they have no state elections. Like, there are no candidates. They're not just having them at all. So, yeah, it's going to be quite interesting considering fascists are in power.
I'll definitely try to. I will endeavor in general to do more on Kashmir for sure. And
yeah, I know you have like a million topics to cover. So, but you did more than I expected. So, thank you. But
appreciate it.
On a more serious note, I mean,
Well,
obviously
that
Kashmir is
sounded
important
fairly
to me.
serious. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
More
but
serious
the
than
bigger thing with
Kashmir.
Modi, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, we have climate change, man.
That's true.
It's because I grew up there, and because it affects Kashmir and affects the whole world, but the water crisis in Asia. So I lived there till I was about 11 years old. Before we moved to the U.S. And what you guys mentioned, I think it was Monday's interview with the Hindu Kush melting ice.
Yeah, Dar
And,
Jamal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you in my lifetime, I'm 30 now, is when we were kids, we would, as an example for your listeners, we would have the area where we lived. We would have winter vacations for 3 months and 2 weeks off in the summer. You know, the opposite of what the rest of the world or, India and Pakistan have because they have normal weather because it's a very cool place. Well, my little cousins, starting in 2013-14, have summer vacations for 3 months and 2 weeks off in the winter to catch up to the rest of the region. It has gotten so fucking warm in a little over a decade. I mean, it still snows a lot, but it's manageable.
No, but that is a total. I mean, that's I mean, because
you can. And there's when we were kids, nobody had fans. We had electricity, but you didn't need a fan in summer. But now you need fans. Everyone has a fan in the house. Like it's not those fans that rotate. There were no mosquito bites when we were kids. There were mosquitoes, but not enough of them. But now it's just like, humid. It's insane. So, because that will, I do believe, potentially cause the next actual world war. Because between India, Pakistan, and China, which also gets its water from the Himalayas, in about 50, 60 years, when actually a few billion people are fighting over water, I don't know. I think we can.
There's a really, I mean, it's kind of dated now just because like the examples he was using, but there's a book that came out, I think in like 2003 called Resource Wars by Michael Clare. And yeah, I mean, he documented even already, not at the scale that could happen and what you're talking about. I totally agree with you, but just that most conflicts across the globe, including ones that are, of course they overlap with other things. They overlap with religion, ethnicity, and so on. But very much in keeping with how I generally look at things, it's like mostly, though, if you peel it back, it's a diamond conflict. It's a timber conflict. It's a water conflict. And those are the engines of most modern conflicts. I mean, there's even a big dimension to Israel-Palestine that's definitely about water aquifers for sure. So, yeah, man. I'll be tuning in on it more, and in general, I'm trying to figure out how to do more climate change coverage that strikes the balance. I mean, you really do have to figure out in how to cover that, the balance of, and I know some people say there isn't a balance, but I think there is, because I think honestly, like, just conveying how catastrophic it is, I think is immobilizing for people, frankly. So you have to but then at the same time, you can't sugarcoat it. You can't just say like, oh, but no, like, there's all these energy efficiencies. Like, no, we are, and not just climate. I mean, I think, the elimination of other species, deforestation. I mean, it is the defining crisis of our world. So I still haven't figured out the way to talk about it. I've liked Joshua Kahn, who I work with on my show, who's, his primary work has been in climate and First Nations activism. I like the way he talks about it. And I like that there's a sense of actually how to like do strategy in response to it. But, it's like, I thought like Dar Jamal's interview was essential. I wish everybody in the world would read his book and listen to that interview. And at the same time, it was just like, fuck.
See, this is where I think utopian sci-fi is a little bit helpful.
Yeah.
Because when we're just covering the news, it's very hard to envision how we're actually going to deal with these things in the medium to long term.
Right.
So one reason I really like the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson is it's hard sci-fi. There's nothing like magic in there. It's a very realistic envisioning of what's going to happen to the human race in the next 100 years. And it's like a very political conception of how people are going to deal with it and what's going to happen, rather than like everyone just dies.
No,
which is probably not how it's going to happen.
I'm with it. I think people do need, I mean, that's definitely like culture is the antenna. So it could be the antenna.
Well, if I may just
go ahead.
Leave on this note.
Please.
I think, at least for now, what we can do, not just here, but I think around the world, not just about climate change, but all these major problems is, well, look, right-wing guys, fascists in general, don't really care about people or these problems because they're so tunnel vision that they're, own objectives. So Bolsonaro's not going to care about trees in Brazil.
Right,
Modi's not going to care about, 1 billion people with lack of water. So we need to get these people out of power, and we need to call out fascism wherever we see it. It is, and other right-wing extremes, because that is something we can all do, and get people in that actually care. People like AOC, Bernie Sanders, or AMLO in Mexico, as you guys keep talking about these guys. So
definitely
mobilizing people is important. Well, hey, it was very nice talking to you guys. Thank you very much. And in about a year, hopefully, when I finish school, I'll, become a member for all your shows. For now, I'm just
well, first of all, you can become a member of Majority Report for free. That's number one. Just send them an email to majorityreporters@gmail.com, and if you hit the TMBS account, we can. There's low key, you can figure stuff out for students. All right, man.
Most of the Antifada episodes are free.
Thanks, man.
Every single one of the Literary Hangover is available for free.
Every single one. All right, this is gonna.
Man of the people.
It's great, except it's like you have the most. I love how you have the most accessible / most exclusive content. You're like,
hell yeah.
It's all free, but you have to be a genuine intellectual.
Nope,
to engage
that's
in
not true. Not true at all.
Fake news.
Donald Trump Jr. could get something out of my show.
That's true. You could probably get a lot out of your show. You might be able to reset his whole life.
That's not what we're talking about.
He's gonna learn to read.
Dude, Brendan is
everything.
really good at the drops. I think we got to give credit where credit is due. All right, this is going to get a lot of bitchy YouTube and enraged YouTube and Twitter comments. This question, I actually was considering I might do this in some version on Sunday's TMBS. The Mad Mailman, can you weigh in on the Tulsi camp keeping Ana off of the Gabbard TYT interview? Yes, I can.
Is Sam going to let you?
That's really the big question.
Yeah. Well, go for it.
So if this video goes up and I am deplatformed as I was so rudely around Dave Rubin, hold Sam accountable for the violent suppression of speech. No, but look, Ana did a video, and everybody knows. I mean, Ana and I work together. I think Ana does awesome work. A lot of respect for each other. She did a video that focused on the obvious questions in Tulsi's record. Just obvious ones. If you're progressive, you would have a question about her support for drones. You'd have a question for her ambiguity on torture. You'd have questions about her voting against refugees. Now, she did an interview with Cenk. I watched it. Some people think that the answers were great. I thought the answers, I'll give her credit. I thought she was quite transparent in her answers. I think she's quite clear about who she is. And I like some of that. I like the anti-interventionist message. I like the environmental message. I like the message on Venezuela. But she reaffirmed with Cenk, even just like framing on there being like serious, like security questions at the border. No, there aren't. There are not. That's a inaccurate way of looking at that problem. She said when she voted against the majority of Democrats and even against, James Comey, then director of the FBI, kind of suggesting that these additional procedures would be a burden. She indicated that Obama supported what she voted for. I'm sort of unclear about what she's referencing there. But she voted against most Democrats for far more onerous burdens on Syrian refugees. Now, if you understand how this vetting process actually works, you're talking that even before that bill was passed, probably at least a year before, and this is pre-Trump, mind you, at least a year before somebody could even get to the states to complete that process. The vetting was rigorous as hell. The only reason in my mind that you would vote for that is if you are genuinely buying into some version of really deep paranoia about Muslims or people coming from Syria. And again, I disagree with that. We have different positions. I appreciate that Tulsi's not spinning and equivocating. I think she's providing pretty clear answers. They're clear answers that I and most people who have left-wing politics would disagree with. Just as I agree with what she said about Maduro, and I agree generally about cutting defense spending and investing in the country. That's great. Cool. Then the other thing, she's stand by her use of Islamic terrorism as a moniker. The obvious and then what was incredible was that in the interview, she actually pivoted to, well, there's this Wahhabi strain that's funded by the Saudis. I wouldn't necessarily, I think strategically and morally, I would decouple terrorism from any rhetoric of Islam as much as possible, just as a practical matter for even just civic realities in the United States and Europe. That being said, when she pivoted to Wahhabism, already way more specific and way less problematic than the insistence of Islamic. And again, I don't understand how somebody with left-wing politics would not see that a Democratic congresswoman intervening against Obama, not on anything of substance. Obama's bombing Syria. Obama is using drones extraordinarily aggressively and killing plenty of civilians in Yemen and Pakistan. To intervene to say, no, to literally make the Sam Harris argument that you need to call it something. What is the upshot of that? What is the upshot of that in a world where Muslims are surveilled, where Guantanamo isn't closed, and there's a global drone campaign? And if you think that you need to use that specific word to condemn ISIS or condemn Al-Qaeda or deal with the intricacies of foreign policy with Saudi Arabia, you need to make a case that nobody has made. Because anytime I hear it from a Republican freaking out on TV, or Sam Harris whining on his podcast, or Tulsi Gabbard articulating herself well to Cenk, it never holds up, ever. And there is never an answer as to how this wouldn't, in fact, put Muslims in the United States in further harm's way culturally, in a place where there's a rise in hate crimes. So Ana did a video that, again, especially if you're a Tulsi supporter, you should want to get out in front of and not respond like some, lunatic dingbat cultist on Twitter. You would say, okay, either you're misrepresenting her position, and here's how. They always say that they're misrepresenting her position, but then always just basically say what Trump would say, which is like, no, that is my position, but it's the nice version. That's not me. You have not demonstrated. In order to say that you've misrepresented her position, you have to say, no, she actually took the different vote on refugees. You understand how that works? That's what you need to do. So Ana did this video, and Ana, who I trust completely, said Tulsi agreed to come on the Young Turks, but wouldn't get interviewed by her. And I think that that's a bad call. I think Cenk did a good job. And I think that Ana absolutely would have treated her fairly and respectfully, but asked her tough questions and maybe some follow-ups. When I was strongly supporting Bernie Sanders in 2016, I said immediately, the way this dude is responding to Black Lives Matter activists is bad, and he needs to up his game. That's what you do for a candidate that you actually want to see win. And I'm not saying accept bullshit. Obviously, I don't accept bullshit about Bernie. But none of these issues, I went back and forth with somebody. I said, hey, I would be happy if Tulsi could be my second choice. Do you know? I mean, look, let's be stylistically. She does yoga. She's from Hawaii. She's opposed to intervention in Venezuela. Like, she wants single payer. Like, great. Tulsi Gabbard and I could meet each other at some ridiculous health spa in New York City. Okay, like Tulsi Gabbard seems like cool, theoretically.
She surfs.
She surfs. Awesome. Everybody's response. Literally, I'm getting Reddit threads of her shaking hands with Muslim constituents. That's not what I'm talking about. And if you can't understand that difference, you're not able to think analytically, and then you're not able to properly defend your candidate. Or if you want to come out and say, actually, in some ways, she has some extremely right-wing views, I support her anyways, cool. But that's not my politics. I don't vote against refugees. And I thought Bernie's initial answers on drones, I thought Bernie's answers in 2016 about partnering up with the king of Jordan to take on ISIS sucked. And I said it contemporaneously. I think that the fact that he's re-entering the Iran deal, talking clearly about the treatment of the Palestinians, being the only major candidate to talk about what's happening in Brazil, and still coming to right position on Venezuela, while centering global oligarchy and climate change, I think that deserves a lot of props. So move. Move. And again, the last thing I'll say, I mean, to her credit, she isn't really moving, but I don't like where she is. And all Ana did was articulate what is public record. And you're going to need to figure out a better way of dealing with that than, endless evasion, conspiracy theories, and whining. Ana's report should have been seen as an opportunity by people that support Tulsi Gabbard. And an interview with Ana might have actually turned out great for Tulsi. So, sad. Very sad. You're calling from a 718 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? No, sorry. Yeah, 713. My bad. No, sorry. Yeah. 713.
Yo, Michael, is this you?
Yes, this is me. What's up?
Yo, man, it's Jacob White, the butcher of Central Texas. I was just calling in real quick. Man, I gotta say, do you encounter this like hypocrisy where it seems like everything that the left does is like super heavily scrutinized by centrists, and everything that the right does is like ignored or given a pass. Like I had a friend a couple days ago. You can get radicalized right according to them by watching like feminist YouTube compilations, but when neo-Nazis march in Charlottesville, there's no political reaction from them at all. Do you ever encounter that?
You're talking about censor? I don't know, man. It depends which kind of centrist you're talking about. I got to be fair. I think some people that I would consider to be centrists are appropriately freaked out by what's happening in Charlottesville.
Yeah, I mean, the Pod Save guys applauded punching Richard Spencer.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do a credit where credit is due on that one. I think, my friend Gene Bajlan said once, he said the difference in liberals, and he means, liberals, these terms are all mixed up now, but liberals not like in the sense of center-left, but liberal. More like in more proper usage of it. He's like, if you meet classical liberal, but even like not necessarily, but also not just like a fraudulent actual right wing conservative, like a liberal. But anyways, he's like, look, if they think that communists are still the biggest threat, then they're ridiculous. And they really cannot be worked with, and they're deluded. But if they have really different politics than you, but they get that fascists are the primary threats, then there's a lot of room for collaboration.
Yep.
And I think that that's true. Thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it.
That's how George Orwell became a democratic socialist. He went to Spain not really having any sort of clear sort of socialist politics. And he couldn't have, in the press, the Spanish Civil War was seen as just democracy versus fascism, not like a revolution for a classless society. So Orwell gets over there, joins the Party for Marxist Unification, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. Let's see. You're calling from an 845 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Michael.
Yes.
Hi, this is Jamie. I'm calling from Nyack.
Hi, Jamie. What's up? What's on your mind?
Hi, I wanted thanks for taking my call. I wanted to respond to Sam's question yesterday or whenever he had the Greenwald thing, which was what are the stakes of the media getting the Russian story so wrong?
Okay.
And my answer would be that it makes our political work more difficult. Mm-hmm. It's somewhat similar to the case Sam makes about Jamie Dore when I think about it.
Uh-huh.
You know, in my view, we need the Democratic Party to be better if we are to fix the many problems that we face that you all do such a good job covering on the show.
Right.
And it's a hard job. It's an organizing job, and we have to get going, and we need everybody. But the problem with the Russia thing is there's a significant chunks of Dems who watch Rachel Maddow, like 2 or 3 million every night, and the message that she put in their brains worked against them becoming active on this project that we need to do. You know, it made them passive spectators, putting their hopes in Mueller's magic to make Trump, go away, and basically put them on the couch.
So
basically. That's my basic point.
So here's what's kind of a little bit awkward. So I'll just say, just because he isn't here. So I think what Sam would say is that by the time you get to the midterms, national Democrats are not running on this issue. They ran on healthcare. They did it quite effectively in that, 2017, which is kind of the height of this madness, is not 2018, is not 2019. And I think that's true. And I want to say that because I want to put his strongest point forward because he's not here. So, but I would say besides that, I think everybody in this room could not agree with you more. And I think that's to me why, like, to the extent I covered it on my show, which was literally never until I had Matt Taibbi on after it. And some people complained. And look, I think there's some one or two areas that maybe I should have pushed Taibbi on, the more sort of legal aspects of it, maybe. But honestly, I'm interested in the political and media consequences of the story. And I think that the feeding of a savior narrative outside of politics and outside of solidarity and struggle, I think it is a big problem. And I think that, yes, and I think even though Rachel Maddow is like the easiest person and the most ridiculous in terms of her, sort of going all in on that, it was a much bigger problem. And, we see it. I mean, they're marginal candidates, but like Eric Swalwell and Tim Ryan are certainly still, hitting the bag on it. So I agree.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
I mean, suffice it to say.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll just say it on my part. Like, I think Judy Gold made the better case for Russiagate being a problem than Michael Tracy did on that Friday.
Word.
Right.
Word.
Yeah, this just came to mind after hearing that interview, and I visited an aging relative this weekend who's a dedicated Democrat, and she said she watched MSNBC for 3 hours every day, and when the news came out, she got so depressed she couldn't watch the TV.
And that's the thing that I don't
anymore.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I guess that's where I have had a disagreement with Sam, I guess, just in terms of emphasis, because I've certainly heard anecdotes like that myself. And also, look, like, I mean, one hand, you can accept a structural critique of cable news, which is that it's an entertainment business and nobody should be watching it really, with some small exceptions. But obviously, you should be consuming other content and reading books and doing other things if you really want to understand what's going on. But, the notion that, I mean, that's an enormous amount of wasted time that not only fed the political disempowerment, but frankly, look, people who work in these spaces want to claim that they're doing news and not entertainment. So if I'm going to accept their premise and say that it isn't all purely ratings driven, then the no stories on Yemen critique applies. That's a great point. Not covering anything of serious consequence in any sustained way, to do like endless and again, this thing got so ridiculously polarized. Of course you can cover an ongoing investigation of the president, but the notion that it wasn't totally comically overemphasized at the expense of political empowerment and other, frankly, much more serious topics like Yemen, huge problem. Or frankly, even, I mean, hysterically, like the Trump relationship with Saudi Arabia, which doesn't really require like tea leaves. Like, it's right there.
Yeah, there's so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that some of those people were just looking for an excuse to stay on the couch, but, and they were going to take it wherever they could find it. But there's always a lot of give and take there, and I think the mainstream media still does have some power to influence people. I think we see it especially with Fox News and the right. Like, I just read a story about folks who feel like their families have been brainwashed by Fox News and actually had their politics changed by it. So I don't know if it's as extreme as that, but
Jamie, thank you for the call.
All right. Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Bye.
Thanks.
Speaking of someone who had to watch that stuff all day, every day for an extended period of time, it will rot your brain. It's completely antithetical to informing an electorate.
We joke about Trump's executive time, but how he spends so much time watching TV, there's something dark about that too, because that is something that a lot of people, and you don't call it addiction because it's not like some sort of pharmacological thing, but it is you're being alienated and you want something. You want to be socialized in a way you've been sort of conditioned to expect.
And that's interesting. Right. That's one part that's been left out of this narrative about Trump is the executive Times is saying, he's not doing his job, but it is informing his policies and the things and the decisions he's making at the highest office.
That is his job. I mean, the reality is that this is a totally. I mean, I'm not trying to be pedantic and debate with you, but it's literally. I mean, this is a TV presidency. And how, just as you're saying, it's shaping and forming how he communicates, how both the horrific macro policies on immigrants, but also just even the fact that he basically thinks that the entire business of the United States is the equivalent of him arguing with Rosie O'Donnell and Howard Stern.
Well, it's the sort of thing where whenever someone says this is the moment he became presidential, there's always a person that brings up the point that the presidency doesn't make you don't change, you just become more of yourself.
Right.
So Trump just watches more and more TV because that's the muscle that's the way he engages with the world. I would be, if I was president, I'd be Matt has locked himself in the West Wing and he's listening to podcasts.
A lot more Audible time.
Listening to audiobooks.
The president will not stop listening to Audible.
It's going to take me 5 hours to finish this book.
That's actually really funny. It's like, the president will not stop pretending to be a Barack Obama that hates white people.
Yeah, what would your...
he will not do meetings.
Jamie, what would your executive time be if you were Madam President?
Oh, geez. Do I get to leave the house during this executive time, or I have to stay in the house?
You have to stay in there. You'd be listening to drone music.
Yeah, you'd be listening to drone music.
I will be listening to drone music and or Death Grips.
Brendan, what's yours?
I don't know.
Watching baseball.
By baseball, probably.
I don't know.
Actually, Brendan's the George W. Bush, The Office. She's like, put on the ball game.
me and Brett
go to New Jersey, clear some brush.
Watching Nationals.
you get some version, except it's New Jersey, so it's just like a suburban house that you're like trimming the hedges. That's pretty funny.
That sounds all right.
You're calling from a 218 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Tim calling from Grand Forks.
Hey, Tim, what's going on?
Shout out Grand Forks.
Hey, it's something. I got stationed here 2 years ago. I'm still getting used to the cold. First off, I want to thank you guys for doing the show. You guys helped get me through the last couple months of my deployment this past year. So you guys do a bunch of great work.
It's been a cold one.
And
appreciate it.
What's that?
I said it's been a cold one up in Grand Forks. That's where my brother, Grand Forks, North Dakota, where the University of North Dakota is. My brother goes there.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I got back, it was like -30 out. And coming back from the desert, that's a bit of a change.
Jesus Christ. It's horrible.
But what I wanted to call about is I wanted to talk a little bit about the Hatch Act and how it applies to military members.
Okay, what's the Hatch Act? Explain that to people.
Okay. So the Hatch Act is basically this act, I think it was passed in like the 1920s or 30s. It restricts members of the government or government employees from participating in partisan politics activities.
Okay.
The whole idea for it was they don't want government employees using their, authority to support a candidate.
Right.
So, which makes sense. The problem is the DoD created a DoDI that applies it to service members. And the way they interpret it is you can't participate in any campaigns, you can't volunteer, and you can't even express support for any candidate.
I'm confused. So wait, because I actually thought I've known people who've been in the military who when they're off, they literally are off duty. They change into civilian clothes and they go and they knock on doors or whatever. And they didn't. I mean, they certainly weren't. In their understanding, they weren't hiding anything. They were just not working, so they could do campaign stuff. Is that not true?
Well, so my understanding is that is true for reserve and guard members, because when you're not in uniform, you're not working on the weekend, you are not on active duty. For active duty members, you're active 24/7. I actually had to clear this through my legal office because 2 of the campaigns that I donated to for the Democrat primaries reached out to me to try and get me to ask if I could organize rallies for them here, or a viewing for a telecon type thing.
Yeah.
So I checked with my legal office. They said I can attend it. I cannot speak at it. I can't participate in any group discussions. Nothing like that.
You can't participate.
I can't even tell you what campaign.
You can't tell us
group
what
discussions.
So that is going overboard to the point. I get. It makes sense to have some restrictions like that, but that's inhibiting your right as a citizen. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was thinking. And there's plenty of other way worse forms of disenfranchisement, but this has been really upsetting for me because I didn't participate in the last presidential election, and I really wish I had now.
Right.
And now I tried to, and I can't.
Man, also tell that to the ICE union that endorsed Trump.
They're not, yeah.
Yeah, or how about the guys when Trump visited Iraq randomly, the guys that were on tape getting their MAGA hats signed.
I was
going to
bring that up, yeah.
Thing like a campaign.
Yeah.
So that was actually, while I was deployed, that was happening. Funny thing, I worked in the location that manages all the intra-theater travel. We didn't even know he showed up until after he left. That was cool. But on the news, they showed the guys with the MAGA hats, and they were like, this should be a violation. It's Article 92 of the UCMJ going against a direct order. And they cleared it. They said, well, because he is already elected, he's technically not running for re-election, even though he'd already registered his campaign. So we have to clear it. He's the president. So, yeah.
I mean, you look at how the...
So you're just to underscore, you're disenfranchised, and then there's actually, like, that's authoritarian shit.
Yeah, and the implication is that the military is behind this guy for 2020 too,
Absolutely.
right? Like and Trump's obviously feeding all that stuff, like with the proxy, like Kaepernick issues and stuff like that.
Right.
That's disgusting.
That's disgusting, man. That's actually would be really interesting to me to look into that legally, because when you bar like the obvious, like, should you, can you go door to door in your uniform and say to vote for somebody? Of course not. Okay, that's a problem. But frankly, nobody in any uniform should be allowed to do that, obviously. But the idea that you can't, and frankly, particularly while you're serving your country in that capacity, that's insane. That is so fucked up.
Yeah. And like, it even has verbiage in there that says you're not supposed to participate in a radio show. So, like, hopefully this doesn't qualify me for that.
Yeah, we won't clip this.
We won't clip this.
We're not on the radio.
We won't clip this. Yeah, we're also not on the radio, by the way.
Oh, well, sweet.
We're having an internet-based personal conversation that might be heard by other people. I don't know, frankly. To be honest with you, this whole thing could be happening every day, and nobody's listening. All of these people that I am the show and
bots.
Shit could mostly just be bots designed to soothe Sam.
I rate every IM.
It's all a simulation.
It's all a simulation.
It's like
Sam's
the Truman Show.
Sam's
for
like
Sam.
Tracy Morgan in 30 Rock, basically.
Well, isn't like part of her job to listen to him, right?
Dude, thanks for the call, man. We'll look into this more.
Yep, and can I get a shofar for my gecko that just died after 20 years?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Rest in peace, gecko.
Thanks, guys.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you. Butters, why do you think you never hear radical Christian terrorists when right-wingers kill people? By the way, I just want to say, I'm not an advocate of that either. You should try to shrink the usage of that term as much as possible and try to specify it as much as possible. Yeah. Like, that is actually like not a good, I get your point and you're totally right. But the point should be that those security state crutches in general are way overused. And, the point, frankly, like, no. I don't want people there's some organizations, obviously, that are right-wing white nationalist organizations that are a bigger threat in the United States than Al-Qaeda, as an example, that do need to be monitored as specific groups. But as a kind of broad generality, I want to shrink the usage of these terms, and I want less monitoring, less surveillance, less control of all people. So I don't like that move, because the answer from a certain strain of politics is like, oh, well, we can just sort of fairly and equitably over monitor and, imprison and profile everybody, when the real answer is we need to stop doing that.
Let's do the Black Panthers and the KKK.
Yeah. And you
do one of those if you do either of them.
Precisely. And and don't think that because you've evened the score in the security state that they're not going to, they're going to leave the Panthers alone. So, okay. But anyway, I take your point. I'm not trying to jump on you, but I think we want to narrow those terms. Tulsi usually disappointed me when she used the following Trump phrase: if you don't have borders, you don't have a country. She playing to the wrong audience, adopting some of the worst of Trump's phrases. Yeah.
Not a surprise.
Gregory from Oklahoma, I'm sure that the most pivotal year in rock music was 2000 when Limp Bizkit released Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water. I just wanted to make a correction from last Friday's show. All right, I don't know what any of that means.
I might disagree with you, except you know what? We had the Street Fight guys on this past week, and they gave a very spirited defense of nu metal. So maybe we can get along after all.
Yeah, that's a bunch of white people shit. All right, so let's do this. As there still hasn't been a text from Sam, because I do not want to hear like, no, you were supposed to wait.
I got a text from Sam, but it's not about this. So.
It's not about this. All right, and obviously, I mean, look, not only are we going to talk about this more, this is part of the ever expanding lore of so the whole Dave Rubin saga started with a video that I did. I don't even remember what the video was. I think it was probably some like Dave Rubin being like, if you think about it, Martin Luther King would have been a Republican or something like that. Or,
basically.
Something dumb. I don't know. It's some Dave Rubin, something stupid. And actually, I didn't title. Did you title this video?
I titled it. Yeah, Kelly keeps getting the blame, but I'm the one who titled it.
What was it? Something like Dave Rubin's super dumb or something?
Is a very stupid person or something like that.
Which, again, is really descriptive as much as anything else. It's barely, I mean, it's sort of like, is saying that you have a ball cap on insulting? Like, it's just true. I don't really, Dave is not a bright guy.
That's the response someone gets when they say MLK would be a Republican today.
Yes,
sorry.
that is a stupid comment. It's a ahistorical, stupid comment that literally a Google search could clear up.
Google, you have it on your phone.
So then somehow, I don't remember the next, how this went. But Sam started exchanging Twitter mentions with Dave, and Dave Dave has not blocked any of us because he knows that that's a bad look. I mean, I'm sure we're muted.
He blocks plenty of people, but not us.
He blocks people all the time.
Yeah,
but
that's content. As Drill said, you never give your enemies content.
Right. Never give your enemies content. Say I'm dumb, but certain things work. And so Sam was like, I'll debate you. And, again, Dave Rubin is dumb, but he's not that dumb. He's not totally delusional. He knew that the idea of debating Sam on anything policy related would be like
career suicide.
Career suicide, hugely unpleasant experience, massively embarrassing, generate thousands of memes. So he needed to figure out a way of ducking it while maintaining, his credibility as an ideas man. And that is a not put on laugh. It really does crack me up that that's his brand.
It's funny. Can I just butt in
please.
here? The way they talk about the idea marketplace, they really want a strictly regulated ideas marketplace where you can't use words like racist or sexist
or stupid
or dumb
or moronic
or
idiot or breathtakingly stupid.
It's a very regulated. It's not the free marketplace that I like for my ideas.
Right.
I'll just say that.
Yeah, I think we should give ideas a workout. So
I'm a social Darwinist when it comes to ideas.
Word. So Dave, him or whoever scurried over to the MR YouTube page, and it just so happened that the video that Matt so rudely but descriptively correctly titled was up, and Dave was like, I don't debate with people who call me stupid, which, by the way, was very, I don't know what kind of wussbag shit that is. I mean, even there, like, I guess.
Sam debates people that call him stupid.
Yeah, I was going to say, Sam...
And worse.
Yeah, Sam, you can say like, "Hey, you four-eyed, big-nosed moron!" Like, there's the easiest way to have a programmatic change for the entire week. Like, can we start the show 3 hours later? Somebody called me a Jewish moron and wants to argue about taxes, so we're going live at 5 p.m. today, guys.
The best way to get a debate from Sam is call him regressive or something like that.
Yeah, Sam is so. Anyways, whatever.
He's a sick fuck.
Right. Sam is sick. So, Dave, but what Sam responded, correctly. First of all, and this is just so layers of so much bullshit here, because first, Sam suppressed my free speech by taking down the video, which Dave is a matter of principle, particularly because it was on YouTube, for Christ's sake, which is the pinnacle of all free speech questions. Dave had nothing to say, not a principled defense, where, Voltaire, right? I hate it, but I will defend to death his right to say it. That's some good goddamn Enlightenment principles right there. Voltaire, it begins with a V. You could look it up on Wikipedia, Dave. So that video was taken down. My speech was suppressed. And then Sam was like, hey, like I suppressed the guy's, speech, and I would never do anything like that. Michael is, I co-host, but super mean. And I don't condone anything like that. How about we have a civil, ad hominem free exchange of ideas? And Dave's like, too late. My feelings were already hurt. And for years now, more and more people, and in this case, actually, literally more and more people have been calling Dave out to do a debate. Dave apparently is unable to read super chats with the name Majority Report in it without having some sort of like weird physical spasm. And clearly, like, all of the just accumulation of like relentless evidence that this guy is just almost like a pre-joke is accumulating to the point where Dave is retreating further and further into his like crackpot right-wing safe spaces and donor networks, and is also not even putting up a pretense anymore about his role in the exchange of ideas. This happened at Campus Clash. Of course, he's literally on stage with Charlie Kirk and Candice Owens at the University of Connecticut yesterday. He got this question, and watch the... I mean, you talk about a regulated marketplace. I'd call this more like a closed down marketplace.
Walled garden.
My first one is to Dave Rubin. When are you going to debate Sam Seder on the Majority Report?
Oh, I'm not going to debate Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Yeah.
I appreciate your honesty.
Oh, and see, Candice has the right instinct, which is like, ha ha ha. It's doubly awkward because Charlie Kirk, to his credit's like, I did debate Sam in a national platform.
Got
like,
my clock
dude,
clean.
Yeah, like I took my beating like a man. Like what? Like Dave, Jesus. But at the same time, Charlie Kirk is able to string together. Like Dave could not do that. Like he could not do what Charlie Kirk did. Like,
Charlie was frankly
like,
better than I expected him to be.
Yeah, I mean, Dave is not, like, again, let's be a little bit real here. Like, Dave is not capable of doing that. In a way, this is a little bit ableist. So basically,
he lacks the abilities of Charlie Kirk.
Yes. But Candice has the right, like, just dismissive laugh, which is like that's a good default move. And Dave, what I like is like, he's not happy.
No,
like,
yeah.
He's there. He's like hunching, like, yeah, I'm not doing that, you little prick.
He's I shouldn't have to say anymore. I'm just not going to.
I'm just not.
Good on the kid for. Can you play that one more time, Brendan?
Yeah. This is, by the way, this is
how you do
don't
it.
Go to these events and treat these people with disdain and ask them simple questions. Don't freak out.
But don't preface it don't preface it with
no
anything.
preference. Get to the business.
And the business this kid got to was.
My first one is to Dave Rubin. When are you going to debate Sam Seder on the Majority Report?
See,
boom.
Not even. It's Sam Seder of the Majority Report. Couldn't have done it more because then you got the plug in. We appreciate that.
Yep,
Thanks,
thank you.
buddy.
Thank you.
Well
done.
And then you don't give him anything else to respond to besides what you want to respond to.
And
exactly. So why are the left so upset?
Our man was shooting a bunch of shots up there. I think he had a question for Candice Owens next. But, Dave Rubin's obviously on this tour. I think there's still a few weeks of school left. They're probably doing more appearances. Let's get a follow-up.
Let's get a follow-up. Actually, I mean, there's a lot of directions you could take this in. One person suggested that now it's time to talk to Dave about debating me. Let me just add an ecumenical, like, debate Matt, debate Jamie.
Oh, I would
debate Ana Kasparian. Debate, like, I feel like you could do either the follow-up, which is like, why won't you debate Sam, which could lead to some pretty funny things. Yeah. And then you could just, like, that's the first follow-up. And then if somebody's already asked that question, then you say, like, how about Matt Leck?
I have a question, though. Here's a question to give to Dave Rubin, especially if he's with Candice Owens. Ask him, because he's had her on the show, how many experts that are more expert about racism and anti-Semitism than Candice Owens, in his mind, and see what he says.
Again, you know what's so incredible about it is that I'm sitting here literally thinking to myself, Jesus, that's a mean question to ask him. I'm not even bullshitting. I'm just like, God, just toying with that's like a ant with a magnifying
because
glass.
this whole thing with the subcommittee hearing on hate yesterday that Candice Owens just.
Ooh, I don't know about the subcommittee hearing on hate, but I'm more interested in ideas.
Dave,
Can I get a retweet?
Dave got to the point where he's like, she's not a racist because she said Hitler's nationalism was okay. It was just like when he's.
Do you think that Dave's like his Jewish like parents and grandparents are like as dumb as he is, so they're not sort of like upset about this, or is it like they're maybe like, look, kid, we get that like. You had a middling career as a just profoundly unfunny stand-up comic, and now you're like doing this kind of sad YouTube propaganda role to like pay the bills. But like, could you at least refrain from minimizing Hitler's legacy?
We should track him down and find out.
That would be interesting. I would be like genuinely curious because I know absolutely people that I will not name of the faith, of the tribe, who would say like, hey, if you need to say that the water should be polluted to get a check, I mean, everybody needs to make a living. But they would definitely draw a line at like, no, actually Hitler was very bad, and I'm not really comfortable with minimizing that, David. And I understand that you were never the most acute boy, but I think that you were at least able to make it through a quarter of Schindler's List, and you should be equipped enough to understand that what Candice Owens said was actually very bad.
She was just defending. No, but she was just defending nationalism. I don't get it.
That wasn't the point.
Hello.
All right, let's.
Hello.
Is there more to the clip, or is that it?
All right, so let's actually go to the Candice Owens hearing, and we're gonna have a little bit of a sort of couplet of it. By the way, apparently Ted Lieu ruined all of his good work by retweeting Dave Rubin.
Just stay out of it, Ted.
Nah,
yes, Ted, stop being a nice guy.
He's
Just
addicted to the engagements, to the likes and the retweets.
I think that's exactly right. So this is Candice Owens just sort of casually contradicting all of modern political history. I'll give her credit. Unlike Dave, she knows what the Southern strategy is. I am profoundly confident, and I don't think that this is like worth asking, but if you just said like, hey Dave, what's the Southern strategy? He'd be like, well, ideas.
Describe what that is and what hate that you've experienced as a result of your position on that.
I launched a movement called Blexit, which is the black exit from the Democrat Party. When I became educated about the issues and stopped reacting emotionally, which is what the left wants us to do, presumably, when they hold up pictures of burning churches, I began to examine the facts and look at some of the narratives they were spinning. For example, in 2016, it was police brutality, and I realized that they are dissuading us against our own best interests. And I wanted to have a more productive dialogue with the black community about the issues that are actually affecting us and impacting us. When I announced that I was a conservative, I've never seen anything more racist, more disgusting, more vitriolic, and more hate that's come my way in my entire life, and the things that Democrats and the media say about me today. I've been referred to as an Uncle Tom, a bedwench. For those of you that don't know, that means a slave that sleeps with the master, a house nigger. And these are all words that have been said over and over again about black conservatives when they have the audacity to think for themselves and become educated about our history and the myth of things like the Southern switch and the Southern strategy, which never happened.
Okay, so obviously there's a lot of drama and self-victimization there, ironically. But the Southern switch or the Southern strategy is a very well-documented thing. And it is a historical reality that when Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that those who were in the Dixiecrat wing of the Democratic Party switched and migrated to the Republican Party. And a new coalition was built on that basis. And in fact, it accelerated in the 1980s. There was a notion under Nixon that you would sort of have this white ethnic appeal fueled with some Southern resentment, without a doubt. But the sort of like fuller blossoming and articulation of that full sort of apartheid Southern politics actually really culminates and still exists today, obviously, in the Trump White House, but it's reaching its fruition in the Reagan and Bush era. Lee Atwater was the most important Republican strategist of the 1980s. Here he is in a picture with Roger Stone and Paul Manafort. These guys were the three of the top strategists in Reagan's Washington. This is Lee Atwater. This is adjacent. This is the campaign ground level stuff, how this stuff actually works in terms of reality. Now, what voters and what, now, it's not to say that there aren't voters who vote Democrat that hold racist attitudes, of course. But what base of people are you appealing to with this strategy and rhetoric, and where did their political home migrate from?
You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts your backfire. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now. You're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things. And the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we're doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around saying we want to cut taxes, we want to cut this, and we want is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger, you know. So any way you look at it, race is coming on the back burner.
And the only difference now in the era that Candice Owens is so bummed out about being a propagandist for white nationalist forces in is that we're getting closer back to the first phase that Lee Atwater is talking about.
We got a memo here for Nixon from former Strom Thurmond aide Harry Dent. The memo is entitled Southern Strategy and the Northeast. So already on the myth back in 1969.
Wow. This myth goes deep.
The kind attentions of this administration toward the South have been paying off by creating a good atmosphere for further growth and development of the two-party system there, by diminishing the strength of George Wallace, and by bringing a good measure of cooperation from Southern chairmen and other Southern Democrats on Capitol Hill.
And George Wallace, he was like a white supremacist, right?
George Wallace was running to the right of Nixon as an arch segregationist, which gave Nixon room to triangulate and appeal to basically people that didn't want to totally jettison the Democratic Party, or rather mainstream politics, basically in the South, and get appealed to by Nixon. And then Nixon could hold, basically he could hold, just really quick, it's in the Nixon movie. He actually says it's fictionalized where he's meeting with these oil barons and they're complaining about some of Nixon's liberal reforms. And he's like, fine, take your money out and go for Wallace and let George McGovern get elected president, and then your kids will go to school with black people.
The memo continues. Evidently, this is not heard elsewhere, as per the New Jersey election of Kevin Phillips analysis, which shows Cahill put together the Nixon and Wallace vote, plus some Humphrey Sound American vote to win big. But nevertheless, we must cope with the feeling the press, Democrats, and some Republicans have created to the effect that we are less interested in the Northeast.
There we go.
Hayes gets at this too in his book, a more extended look into the Southern strategy starting in the North in the Bronx with Northeastern Republicans.
Yeah, the Southern strategy is not just a geography, it's a state of mind. The Southernization of national politics.
It's the racial demagoguery strategy.
Just the fact that she was invited to talk about this at a hearing on white nationalism is like insane.
Appalling.
Like, there are not two sides to the question, is white nationalism real?
Absolutely.
And the idea that she's an expert that should be wasting fucking Congress, sorry for swearing, but Congress's time, especially like next to people, I don't know if we'll get to them today, but people who lost children from like...
Well, let's get to that.
Yeah.
Let's do that, because that is like fundamentally disgusting and offensive. What number is it on? Okay, this is number 4. So also at the hearing is Dr. Mohammed Abdul Salah, who recounts how in 2015, 2 of his daughters and his son-in-law were shot execution style in North Carolina. Now, just contrast this man, his experience, with the, grotesque, craven cynicism we've just seen.
Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of Congress, and ladies and gentlemen, February 10, 2015, that was the day our lives changed forever when my two daughters, Yusra and Razan, and my son-in-law, Dia, were shot to death execution style in Yusra and Dia's home in Chapel Hill. When we arrived at the scene, yellow tape and flashing lights froze the blood in our veins. We have waited almost 6 hours before police officers confirmed that Dia, Yusra, and Razan had all been shot to death. In a desperate attempt to make it bearable, an officer whispered, and I quote, "They didn't suffer, it was swift, it was one shot to the back of the head." Well, his statement did not make it any more bearable, and nothing did. News about their deaths spread over the internet and media over the globe, but we never heard in the media that the murderer hated them. Trouble began when this man observed my two daughters appearing on the scene, adorned with their hijabs. I remember my Yusr telling me that this condescending man told her he hated how she looked and dressed. He made it very clear to my children that they were not welcome in their own neighborhood. I must be one of a few physicians, if not the only one, who read his own children's murder autopsy reports in details. They are seared into my memory. Bullets macerated Yusr and Razan's brains. Dia took many bullets to the arms and chest before he fell down to the ground, and after that the murderer saw that he was still breathing and shot him again in the mouth. The last time we saw them in their coffins, Yusr's forehead was bulging and her hazel eyes had turned gray and lifeless. What was once Razan's warm and smiling face filled with life was now lifeless, stone cold and deadly pale. Dia's face lacked expression and he had a broken tooth from that final shot to the mouth. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to testify before you, but I want you to remember more than their deaths. I want you to know who they were and what we have lost. Yusra was a vibrant 21-year-old woman who always found ways to give to others in every aspect of her life, from volunteering at a dental clinic for Syrian refugees in Turkey to feeding the homeless in downtown Raleigh and building houses for Habitat for Humanity. She graduated from NC State University and was accepted at UNC Schools of Dentistry to be with the love of her life, Dia. Razan was 19 years old and was so full of life. She was a gentle soul, generous giver, talented artist, a photographer. Razan was a freshman at NC State University's School of Design and aspired to be an architect. During her freshman year, she mentored and taught youth, and she led Project Downtown, feeding the homeless in Raleigh and Durham with meals tagged with inspirational and personalized notes.
I don't have anything to add to that.
I'll just add, Mort Klein was there, presumably invited by the Republicans, to say about how the real thing we need to focus on is Muslim anti-Semitism, and literally ask that man, does the Quran really not teach Islamic people to hate Jews? Or does Islam not really teach Jew hatred?
He asked that after that man gave that testimony.
Yep.
That's some
Mort
fascist
Klein is
shit.
Disgusting.
I'm looking for video for that, so if anybody sees
that
it.
is so obscene. That is so obscene.
Dark days, folks. We got to fight these.
Bullprog. I can understand being skeptical of people. That's right. Bullprog. I can understand people being skeptical of people who only focus on a slice of an overall picture. But if we talk about human rights abuses in other countries, while ours has its own abuses, can't we also talk about other nations interfering in other nations' elections, even though our country isn't innocent on that front? Especially for progressives who see global connections. Let's talk about ours and their issues. Just seemed like Michael was a bit dismissive in the topic in a way that would leave people uninformed. I guess I'm not. Oh, this is the Mauritius thing? No, I mean, look, I'm perfectly willing to talk about, particularly real issues. I think, like, as an example, China's role in Africa and this sort of like new neo-colonial fight between the United States, France, and China in the African continent is a big deal. And I have no problem, and I've obviously never had a problem talking about any country's role in anything. I mean, I've think of how much I've triggered a certain type of person because I'm willing to say the reality of Russian war crimes in Syria as an example. But I have to say, looking for, thinner and thinner pieces of thread to like obsess about Russia on is just not productive. I'm sorry. And if I'm going to do, on that level, if it really is just as simple as if it doesn't connect to a broader global thread, I do think it's more incumbent on us to discuss how the United States is interfering in Mauritius than how Russia supposedly is. Also, like, there's no link, there's no context. It's just Russia did this. And that is when it starts to just sort of devolve into like, I don't like that type of talk about just the United States. Like, it's boring and one-dimensional, and so I'm not interested in it, and I will continue to be dismissive of it. I don't think that, I'm not trying to be defensive, but I don't think I'm really the one to, I'm quite willing to accuse, and critique every country's record, but I don't think this Russia discourse, I think it's...
Yeah, there's definitely a degree, there's definitely a cutoff point where it's like, what are we doing here when we can focus on, the close to home things? I think that's just kind of self-evident.
Yeah, I mean, for me, even with IMs, there's still just some sense of like, we actually have to like emphasize things here and use time effectively. And I think even there, it's like, the conversation, if you're really interested in election hacking and interfering and also like the much bigger things that are happening in terms of like cybersecurity between the United States and China, which I need, that's like in my view, like those tensions are going to be much more important to figure out in the future. Then the conversation needs to be about like, okay, do you have a Geneva Conventions for cyber war or drones? Like, is there a new international law framework? Well, okay, yes, but also international laws of fiction that's really just like subservient to power. So how do you deal with that? Like, you got to at least connect it to some type of bigger thread that we can actually do something with, other than like, this is just a random bad action by some country. I don't even like to do stories about that with the United States, frankly, that I can't find a larger pattern with. But if I was, that is where like my primary obligation as an American, I think, has to kick in. In my opinion. Hey, I heard Bernie's wife helped file a bankrupt small New England college, and it wasn't Simon's Rock. And what with the Larry David imitation? Oh, well, I mean, I know that there's that old story about Bernie and the about I don't even remember that story. It's like there was like a loan or something. Sorry. It's going to need to be bigger than that. But I don't think that story was flattering, as I recall. Leftist European, have you guys read one of Bernie Sanders' books? If yes, are they good? I read Insider in the House. I mean, it's good. I don't know. Sure. It's good for political reading.
Yeah.
I mean, like reading a politician's book.
As far as politicians' books go, it's probably fine.
I don't know that you necessarily need to read his book to.
I mean, I'd say make it a roundabout campaign donation if you want to buy it. That's how I thought of. I feel like I bought one of them or something. But
is that how you judge if he deserves $1 million? You read his book and see if it's good.
Yeah, you have to see if the book's good or not.
That's exactly right. Let's play a clip of Steve Mnuchin just being an asshole. Wasn't Stephen Mnuchin? Didn't he have a pact with who was it? Mattis? That if one of them left, they'd all leave because they're so concerned about the fate of the country.
And Cohen too.
Oh yeah. Well, Steve Mnuchin is the only cockroach still there, and he does not care about the fate of the country or really anything, I think, besides his own self-enrichment. He's just a horrible person, even on a basic social etiquette level. Here he is being whiny and aggrieved with Maxine Waters.
I've sat here for over 3 hours and 15 minutes. I've told you I'll come back. I just don't believe we're sitting here negotiating when I come back. We'll follow up with your office. How long would you like me to come back for next time? I've told you I'll accommodate you.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your reminding us of the length of time other secretaries have been here. This is a new way. And it's a new day, and it's a new chair, and I have the gavel at this point. If you wish to leave, you may.
Can you clarify that for me?
Yes, clarify.
What is to clarify. That is an impolite way of saying, if you choose to, you can fuck off. There's nothing complicated about this. He's literally going to spend the next couple of minutes whining for essentially a polite request to leave. Go ahead.
If you wish to leave, you may.
Okay, so we're dismissed. Is that correct?
If you wish to leave, you may leave.
I don't understand what you're saying.
You're wasting your time. Don't remember you have a foreign dignitary in your office.
I would just say that the previous when the Republicans, they did not treat the Secretary of the Treasury this way. So if this is the way you want to treat me, then I'll rethink whether I voluntarily come back here to testify, which I've offered to do.
Mr. Secretary, I want you to know that no other secretary has ever told us the day before that they were going to limit their time in the way that you're doing. So if you want to use them as examples, you have acted differently than they have acted, and as I have said, if you wish to leave, you may.
If you'd wish to keep me here so that I don't have my important meeting and continue to grill me, then we can do that. I will cancel my meeting and I will not be back here. I will be very clear if that's the way you'd like to have this relationship.
Thank you. The gentleman, the secretary, has agreed to stay to hear all of the rest of the members.
Okay,
Please
so just
cancel
let's be
your
clear to
meeting
the press.
and respect our time.
I am
Who is next on the
canceling my
list?
foreign meeting. You're instructing me to stay here and I should cancel.
No, you just made me an offer.
No, I didn't make you an
You
offer.
made me an offer that I accepted.
I did not make an offer. Just let's be clear.
Well,
You're instructing me. You are ordering me to stay here.
No, I'm not ordering you. I'm responding. I said you may leave anytime you want. And you said, okay, if that's what you want to do, I'll cancel my appointment and I'll stay here. So I'm responding to your request. If that's what you want to do.
That's not what I want to do. I told you.
What would you like to do?
What I've told you is I thought it was respectful that you'd let me leave at 5:15.
You are free to leave anytime you want. You may go
well then,
anytime you want.
Please dismiss everybody. I believe you're supposed to take the gravel and bang it. That's
Please do not instruct me as to how I'm to conduct this committee.
Wow.
You are a douchebag.
Is anyone else getting kind of a Judge Judy vibe from her there?
Yes. I'm getting any human being that has to have more than a 1 minute exchange with Steve Mnuchin vibe from her there.
Yeah, there's a few things going on in this video, I feel like. One is that Steve Mnuchin has obviously not been told what to do by anyone in 30 years.
Right.
The other thing is this is two people of power talking in their sort of like businesses, ways that they discuss with each other, and they're just not working together. Like, he does not know how to argue with this woman.
No, he does not.
And he gets absolutely played.
Absolutely clowned on. You're calling from a 530 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? We're running quickly out of time, so be quick, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks for taking my call, Michael. This is passive, aggressive, progressive. I guess I need to add what you call my question hypothetical.
Okay, buddy. All right. Well, welcome back.
Yeah, I know you got to jump.
Straight
I'll
to
get
business.
to the point as soon as I can, but don't fucking hang up on me again, prick.
Whoa!
That's more like aggressive.
Wow, aggressive.
I know it's a really stupid way to fucking approach this, but I'm calling because I want some fucking help.
Okay, all right.
Can you do that or not?
Well, you're going to need to calm down,
right?
sir. This is better than yesterday so far. But you're going to need to calm down your prick levels yourself and ask the fucking question now.
Well, first I need to apologize for what I just said.
It's okay.
And what I tweeted at you yesterday.
It's totally fine.
I'm sure you're going to prove me wrong.
Please ask the question.
About all the things I called you, right? I'll wait
lose
for
my
that.
patience,
Not
please.
right now, but I'll wait later
Ask
for that.
the
all right?
question.
I'm not no clever fuck.
All right, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, man.
You're done. Yes.
No prefatory
Just
material.
Ask the question. Ask the question.
We don't.
You have a question, you ask it. The question is here. You put it out of your fucking mouth and you present it.
Here's the thing. Unless you've probably called into the show 20 times and we all know you by name, we don't remember when you tweeted at us 2 months ago. We don't remember any of this stuff. Just get to the point.
And I really was not like you. I felt like you were doing that on purpose to wind me up. Like I was here. I was even going to apologize for being rude to you. Now I am glad I was rude to you. I should have been more rude to you. Jesus Christ.
That one came in hot.
It came in hot, but it still went nowhere, which is why a part of me is really hoping that this is a brilliant troll.
I think it might be.
That would be awesome.
He's got that brilliant California passive-aggressive,
He knows exactly
no way to know how to address it.
how to piss me off.
Conflict.
It's awesome.
Problem.
All right, you're calling from a 919 area code with very likely the last call of the day. So, welcome.
Hey, what's going on, Michael?
Hello. What's
This is Jody from North Carolina. Can you hear me?
Jody? Jody. Sorry, Jody. What's on your mind, man?
I know I got to be quick, so let me just go ahead and jump into it. Basically, I was calling because I know Sam and Glenn Greenwald had their discussion yesterday, or y'all taped it earlier or whatever, but it was aired yesterday. And are y'all familiar with Barrett Brown?
Yeah, a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Well, had you seen like some of his basically criticisms of Glenn Greenwald in the Intercept here in the last couple of days?
I haven't. No.
Having to do with basically it's having to do with the Snowden, the archive being shut down by the Intercept, and he had leaked a bunch of internal emails.
I think that
and
Mark Ames criticized that a couple years ago. It was Mark Ames's kind of initial critique of the Intercept. But no, I don't. I think actually Barrett Brown was on this show literally from prison. But I'll check it out. Thanks.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's basically, and I also wanted to say, man, I really enjoyed the show, and people need to quit calling and messing with Jamie, man. Jamie, you're awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And the last dude, I think the last dude was a pretty good troll.
What?
Sorry, it was too loud.
I'm pretty sure the last guy was a pretty good troll. But either way,
Yo,
left is best.
let me just say, left is best, and that is so. Either that guy, I won't say what I hope, but either I really don't like that person, or like total props for being an awesome troll. Like that. There's two ways on that, and one is like banned for life or awesome job. That was the final call of the day. Let's read a few IMs. J. Cole. Hey, Michael, if Sam was to win the leadership of the Libertarian Party, would you vote for Sam over Bernie? On a serious note, have you read about what's happening in Libya? I need to mug up on Libya just as I do need to on Kashmir and Guyana. I would not even vote for Sam in the primary, so let's be serious.
I'm voting for Vermin Supreme in the Libertarian primary.
I think we'll form a Vermin Supreme block.
Ponies for all.
I'm still in it for Daryl Perry.
Rude dude Sam Seder. Final step in intergenerational wealth plan. Make so much money as a socialist to piss off Republicans enough that they introduced higher tax rates to own the libs. Sam Snuff Stash. Millionaire Bernie. If Bernie were poor, he'd be bashed for being poor. Undiluted intellectual dishonesty. Yeah, and just frankly, just total bizarre.
Well, they also have bashed him for being poor.
They suck.
Yeah, never had a real job till he was 35.
I love that article. If you Google it, you'll find it. Bernie Sanders, the bum who wants your money.
Well, it's like, this isn't entirely analogous, but it's like what we said about the guy who called in wanting us to guarantee that everybody who supports Bernie in the primary will vote for whoever they...
Listen, I made that guarantee. I don't know why.
Brendan made the guarantee.
But it's like
guarantee is made. He's both guaranteeing that Bernie will win and that they'll vote for somebody
People need
else.
to understand that the things that you feel compelled to air because of your anxieties might not be telling you about the world. They might be telling you about yourself.
On a motherfucking introspective tip. Quam. So everything is Sam's fault? Then it's time for the MR crew to unionize.
No, lavender and unions. Welcome back. Joining us now is Jethro James, and this is a case that involves actually yo-yos that would explode in teenagers' hands
yeah, they were blowing the teenagers' limbs off. And this yo-yo company, there's documentation, found out and discovered they knew it was actually blowing the teenagers' fingers off.
That really is stunning. David Pakman's here. Jimmy Doyle's an asshole. Right, David?
Oh, yeah. All right. Tomcat. Hey, guys, you spoke a lot about normies. I don't really know if I'm keen on the word or not. I agree with Jamie that normie is a bit vague and meaningless. I also see these charts about how most UK voters like left policies like renationalizing the railroads and funding NHS, and we all know how popular Bernie and his policies are, so wanting the best for everyone isn't that fringe. No, I agree with that completely. It's actually more just like annoying subculture stuff, not those basic policies. All right, the final I am of the day. I'm sorry I'm not reading all of that. It's just you have a lot in there, and I want to try to get to somebody else too with maybe a final I am. Galaxinacious with the final I am of the day. Buenos tardes, camaradas. I love all you guys, and I'm appreciative of your efforts to curtail the worldwide spread of fascism. As a teacher, I've notched up the left-wing indoctrination to full blast recently. Hell yeah, dude. The change ain't going to happen. The change ain't going to happen amongst the 12-year-olds, though, comrades. Not poor ones, anyway. The bourgeoisie in this country need to leave the cul-de-sacs and start spreading the message to the kids. Left is best. All right, everybody. Tomorrow, Sam from Vegas.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid.